And a very good morning. It's 7 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
I hereby declare that Hannah Catherine Spencer is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Gorton and Denton constituency.
An historic by-election win for the Green Party in Gorton and Denton this morning, topping the poll by more than 4,400 votes.
I can and won't accept this victory tonight without calling out the politicians and divisive figures who constantly scapegoat and blame our communities for all the problems in society.
Joy for the Green Party leader Zach Palansky. Reform, who came second, claimed the win was the result of cheating. Labour languish in third.
Pakistan is in open war with Afghanistan, its defence minister says, as the countries exchange airstrikes overnight.
The US War Secretary denied access to Anthropic's powerful AI tools. The company's boss says he's worried about their use to spy on citizens and in autonomous weaponry.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here today. Our top story, the Green Party have won their first ever parliamentary by-election with a 40% share of the vote in Gorton and Denton. Hannah Spencer is the new MP. She told Sky News the victory was no surprise after hearing a desire for change on the doorstep.
Let's take you through some of the results now. The Greens secured 40% with 14,980 votes. Reform, second, with 10,578. And a dramatic fall for Labour, who've won in this area for almost a century. They came third with 9,364. Well, here is some of what Hannah Spencer had to say in her victory speech.
Working hard used to get you something. It got you a house, a nice life, holidays. It got you somewhere. But now, working hard, what does that get you? Because talk to anyone here and they will tell you. The people who work hard but can't put food on the table, can't get their kids' school uniforms, can't put their heating on, can't live off the pension they worked hard to save for, can't even begin to dream about ever having a holiday, ever. Because life has changed. Instead of working for a nice life, we're working to line the pockets of billionaires. I lived in this constituency at one of the most difficult and challenging periods of my life. I saw how strong the community was at holding things together. But I saw how much harder life is when the things around you are broken. The litter, the fly tipping, the dirty air. And when I moved, it became even clearer, and this is why I am fighting for the community that I lived in and that I still work in, because I absolutely refuse to accept that we should ever have to move and leave our communities for good schools, a thriving high street and clean air. And I will not accept a society where having more money gets you a longer life expectancy.
Well, with Reform in second place, their candidate Matt Goodwin was far from despondent. However, his leader, Nigel Farage, has now accused the Greens of cheating. He said on X, this election was a victory for sectarian voting and cheating. Matt Goodwin was a great candidate for us. Roll on the elections on May the 7th. It'll be goodbye Starmer and goodbye to the Tory party.
Well, Labour have gone from a 13,000 vote majority to finishing in third. After the result came through, the party chair, Anna Turley, said this. This result is clearly disappointing. By-elections are normally difficult for the party of government, and this election was no different. She goes on, we've had thousands of conversations over the last few weeks, and we know the majority of voters here did not want the poisonous politics of Nigel Farage and Reform. Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has been up all night for us at the count, as is his wont. John, great to have you with us and great coverage overnight. I hope you're going to get some well-earned rest. Look, that final point there from Anna Turley there, how much is she right about that despite it being a really bad night for Labour, it's also a rejection of some of the politics of Reform?
Well, that was a point put to me by Lucy Powell in quite a lengthy interview I did with her. Can't remember what time it was, a few hours ago. Yeah, Labour are trying to claim that because reform didn't win, it's not such a bad result. But, I mean, that's a pretty bogus claim, really. The fact is that they have been roundly defeated by the Green Party. I mean, the Green candidate, Hannah Spencer, a plumber, who spoke with quite a sort of authentic working class voice, not like your typical Green Party activist. She won by about 4,500 over reform, and then Labour even further behind. Now, the problem Labour have got here is they appear to have got their tactics horribly wrong. They've spent the last month or so attacking Reform UK, both in a lot of leaflets that they distributed during the campaign, and of course every Wednesday we hear the Prime Minister attack Nigel Farage at Prime Minister's Questions, where of course and they leave themselves exposed to the Green Party. They barely laid a glove on the Green Party during the campaign, and of course now they are paying the price for it. Meanwhile, you've got Nigel Farage and Matt Goodwin, the Reform UK candidate, accusing the Greens of cheating. Now, what they are referring to there, at 10 o'clock when the polls closed, there was a report published by an outfit calling itself Democracy in Action, and they were claiming that they'd witnessed when they were monitoring the people voting at polling stations what they call family voting. In other words, a whole family, one person going in casting a vote for a whole family, and that's what the Reform Party is complaining about when they say cheating. Now, the council, Manchester City Council, said, why didn't Democracy raise this with us during the day? Well, they claim they did. Anyway, it's a row over claims that family voting took place far more than it ever has. Nigel Farage said in his complaint that it was in Muslim areas. Now, to be fair, the report that came out at 10 o'clock talking about family voting didn't mention Muslims at all, but Mr Farage told me when I spoke to him that he's been campaigning against this for 10 years or so, since a by-election in Oldham in 2015. So, Reform are crying foul. Labour are saying, well, it's not quite such a bad result. Well, Labour backbenchers won't see it that way. Plenty of Labour backbenchers are this morning saying the Prime Minister has really got to change course here. On the left of the party, obviously they're saying Labour's got to be much more Labour, stop trying to out-reform reform. And the Prime Minister, of course, will be under massive pressure now. I mean, he's already faced a call from the leader of Labour in Scotland to step down. He survived what looked like a coup a few weeks ago, and now, of course, they've had this disastrous result. So the knives really will be out for Sir Keir Starmer. Whether anybody moves against him right now is not certain by any means, of course, because Labour MPs will probably want to wait until get the local and national elections in Scotland and Wales out of the way. But this is a disaster for Labour, despite their claims that they've seen off reform. They haven't seen off reform at all, and they've got their tactics wrong by concentrating too much on reform and leaving themselves open to a defeat from the left. Obviously, the Greens had support from people who were previously backed George Galloway's party, and also perhaps even Jeremy Corbyn. He came here to campaign at the weekend. So a terrible night for Labour, a lot of excuses which quite frankly won't wash with a lot of Labour MPs. But let's not take anything away from the Green Party. Fantastic result for that. They've won their first ever parliamentary by-election, and they've won it with a few thousand votes to spare. So this is quite a historic day, really. A big change, of course. We really are into five-party politics now, although the Tories and the Liberal Democrats were absolutely nowhere. But really, alarm bells will be ringing in the Labour Party after this seismic result, I think we can call it. That's certainly what the Greens are calling it.
They certainly are. And John, just so we're clear, we're going to hear a lot, I think, in the next couple of days, perhaps weeks, about this idea of family voting. I think he suggested it was when one person votes for all the family. I think the definition is actually when members of the same family or household go into the voting booth together and collude. Of course, that would be a criminal offence. So we are going to hear a lot more about family voting. So I guess people should get used to that term and exactly what it means.
Yeah, and as you say, Manchester City Council raising question marks about those findings. But John, while we've got you, you talked about it being a bad result for Labour. What do you think this means specifically for Keir Starmer, who, of course, blocked Andy Burnham for running as Labour's candidate in that seat?
Well, that was, his critics would say that was one of the blunders of the campaign. Now, to be fair, the Prime Minister was staring down the barrel of a gun, really, and, of course, if he'd let Andy Burnham stand, he'd be back in, assuming he'd won this by-election. Of course, this result cast doubt on whether even Mr Burnham would have won. His supporters claim he would have done. But, of course, he'd have let back into Parliament somebody who has openly said he wants to challenge Sir Keir Starmer for his job. But there are plenty of Labour MPs, including Lucy Powell, who was here last night, of course, was the excuse me, the one person who voted to let Andy Burnham stand against 8 who voted against, including the Prime Minister and a committee of the National Executive. So I suppose you could argue that that was Sir Keir Starmer's first mistake, although I happen to think that he perhaps would have been mad to let Andy Burnham stand, because he'd be facing even more pressure now on his leadership and possibly a challenge from Andy Burnham. But of course the tactics of taking on reform and ignoring the Green Party were another serious mistake, and something that Labour MPs will say to the party leadership: look, stop trying to out-reform, because it's not working. If you look at the figures, our colleague Sam Coates had some interesting figures during the night, which shows that Labour voters, only something like 8% went to reform, and a much larger percentage went to the Green Party. So the tactics look absolutely flawed, and that's why there's so much criticism of the Prime Minister. People in the Labour Party are blaming him personally for these mistakes.
Well, we're going to get plenty of reaction throughout the day. John, I don't know if you get to go to bed yet. I'm not sure. But
rest well, John.
Thanks for staying up for us, at least.
We'll see you soon, John. Nice one.
Loads of political reaction, as you'd imagine, throughout the show. We're going to be talking to the government very shortly.
We are.
Heidi Alexander is going to be touring television studios, fielding the questions over Labour's loss. But we'll also hear from the triumphant Greens and also from Reform as well.
We will indeed, because it says, John says, 4 or 5 party politics now, so it's not just the opposition. You didn't even mention them. The Conservatives will be up in the show later. We will hear from them. We've got 700 and something votes in this election, way down in 4th place. An extraordinary time for British politics. Indeed.
Quite a result. Plenty of analysis coming up. In the meantime, though, let's turn our attention to the United States. And Bill Clinton is set to testify to a congressional committee investigating paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein today. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton was in the hot seat, the former Secretary of State, of course, giving evidence in a closed-door session, telling the media shortly afterwards that she wants to see the truth come out. Our US correspondent James Matthews has been following the story for us.
Hillary Clinton was dismissive of this process going into it. She called it partisan political theatre. That didn't necessarily change over the course of some 4 or 5 hours of questioning. She said the questions were repetitive, said at the end she was asked about UFOs. She came out, spoke to the waiting media at the end of it all. She was asked about her husband giving evidence today. She was asked about whether she was 100% confident there wasn't anything that he knew about Epstein's crimes. Her answer to that was an emphatic yes. She was asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, who is Epstein's co-accused, who attended the wedding of Chelsea Clinton, the Clintons' daughter, in 2010. That was after Epstein's conviction and after Virginia Giuffre, a victim, named Maxwell in a civil legal action. Why was she at that wedding? It's a question I put to her. Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? She'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the +1, the guest of someone who was invited.
It was a full-day session yesterday. It will be that and more. That's the expectation of members of this House Oversight Committee who will question the former President, Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton, she said she didn't engage with Jeffrey Epstein. That's not the case with Bill Clinton. He had an association over many years with Epstein. While he was in power, Epstein was present in the White House on occasions. Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet, so many questions to ask him, probably more pointed than the questions put to his wife yesterday.
There's James Matthews reporting there from DC. It's going to be quite the moment later when former President Bill Clinton gives evidence to that committee.
Yeah, not a common occurrence at all. Yeah, we'll be filling you in on all the developments from that later on.
Definitely will. Now, Pakistan's defence minister says that they are now in open war with Afghanistan. Overnight, Pakistan carried out airstrikes across Afghanistan, including hitting the capital, Kabul. Let's bring in our Asia correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, for a bit more on this. Cordy, great to have you with us. Big moment, this. Open war, is that right?
This is a hugely significant moment, Kamali, after months of tension between the neighbours. You heard there from Pakistan declaring this as open war. What we saw happen overnight were airstrikes by Pakistan. Now, we have spoken to the spokesperson of the Taliban, Zabiullah Mujahid, and he's confirmed that these strikes took place in the capital, Kabul, and Paktia and Kandahar provinces as well. Now, Pakistan claimed that 133 Taliban soldiers have been killed. The Taliban government say, in fact, 8 people have died. We have seen a lot of claim and counterclaim when it comes to figures, and they are hard to independently verify. But Pakistan do say that this was in retaliation to attacks that were carried out by the Taliban on Thursday night. And they also claim that the Taliban is actively supporting the TTP, that's Pakistan's Taliban, who are carrying out militant attacks inside Pakistan. And this has been a particularly devastating period within the country when it comes to militancy. In fact, 2025 was the most deadly year for militant attacks in a decade. And Pakistan also accused India of helping to support the Taliban as well. So we'll have to wait and see whether this will escalate further. But certainly right now, this looks like a major inflection point, and mistrust between the two is intensely deep.
All right, Cordelia, for now, thank you for that reporting. As Cordelia says, intense distrust between the two sides, open war. I mean, it's a huge moment, potentially, for the region, for both nations.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll get Cordelia will fill us in with all the developments from there. In the meantime, though, Anthropic, who make the chatbot Claude, has rejected a request from the US Department of War, once the Department of Defence, for the full unrestricted use of its AI model.
Yeah, the company's chief executive said they cannot, in good conscience, agree to the War Secretary Pete Hegseth's demand for unrestricted use of the AI tool.
So the company's CEO said, these threats do not change our position. We can't, in good conscience, accede to their requests. But using these systems for mass domestic surveillance is incompatible with democratic values.
Well, talking about the potential of using AI in autonomous weaponry, he said that it could one day be a possibility, but today, frontier AI systems are simply not reliable enough to power fully autonomous weapons. He goes on, we've offered to work directly with the Department of War on research and development to improve the reliability of these systems, but, he says, they haven't accepted that offer. We'll, of course, get more on Anthropic's decision to pull that contract with the US throughout the day.
Yes, and it's such an interesting issue, isn't it? How AI is regulated. It's a debate, not just in America, but in this country, all across the world, and the extent to which AI should go and what it should be used for. Big debate of our times.
Indeed it is.
Now then, let's get more reaction to the by-election result overnight. One, of course, by the Greens in Gorton and Denton. We can get The word now of the government. Heidi Alexander, Secretary of State for Transport, has just joined me.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in. Gorton and Denton areas, Labour strongholds for generations. I mean, this was Labour's 38th safest seat. Won at the last election by Andrew Gwynn with a majority of more than 13,000. You've now come in third place and have lost 4,000 votes. I mean, it's quite a fall from grace, isn't it?
So there's no doubt that last night was a difficult and deeply disappointing night for my party, the Labour Party, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat any of that. What I would say to you, though, is that it's not unusual for governing parties to lose mid-term by-elections.
In such a safe seat and to fall into third, is that unusual?
Look, I don't think we should overinterpret this result. There is no direct read across from what happens in a by-election to what happens in a subsequent general election. And just because people yesterday in Gorton and Denton voted for a Green MP, it doesn't automatically follow that they want Zach Polansky to be their Prime Minister, or for that matter, Nigel Farage, which I think is the greater threat across the country. Now, look, we have had a difficult night. I don't think the circumstances in which this by-election came about were particularly helpful for us. And for me, that reinforces the importance of all politicians having really high standards in public life when they hold elected office. And we've had a challenging set of headlines in recent weeks. And I think fundamentally, this government is taking decisions, the right long-term decisions, to get more money in people's pockets, to get the economy growing, to invest in our public services. We had good news, didn't we, last week about inflation coming down, about the energy price cap coming down. But I recognise that people who voted yesterday in Manchester haven't felt the effect of that in their day-to-day lives. And so, look, you know, I think that we've got to keep this result in perspective. Good political parties, successful politicians are always in listening mode. And so we will, of course, reflect carefully on that result. But I do think we've got to get on with fixing the problems that we were elected to fix at the general election back in 2020.
OK, well, let's talk about some of the lessons. You say that Nigel Farage is the greater threat to the country. And, in fact, Labour did characterise this as a fight between Labour and Reform. I mean, you underestimated the Greens, didn't you?
So I think that there was a clear majority in Gorton and Denton against the toxic, divisive politics of Nigel Farage and their candidate Matthew Goodwin there. Let's remember that he was a candidate who said you couldn't really be English unless you had white skin. He was also a candidate that was backed by Tommy Robinson. Now, on this occasion, the Greens did better at mobilising the anti-reform vote for them. But I don't think that in constituencies across the country, come the next general election, it automatically follows that that happens everywhere. I think there probably was quite a lot of tactical voting that went on when I was knocking on doors. There was sort of uncertainty. I was often speaking to people that were considering voting reform, not sure which way to go. I think there's a lot of volatility in politics at the moment. And when I contest elections, I fight for every vote. And I think that is what will be happening in the local elections that we head into in May of this year.
You say that you shouldn't extrapolate too much from a by-election, but do you think you can learn lessons from this? Since coming into office, it feels like you've focused a lot on tackling reform, and under Morgan Sweeney, a lot of your policies have seemed to be designed to attract people that might otherwise vote for reform. Should you be concentrating more on issues to the left of politics?
I think we have to focus on delivering for the mainstream majority in this country, and I think that what people want to see is investment in the economy. We've secured £340 billion of private investment. They want good jobs for the next generation. They want more money to be in their bank account at the end of the month. They want their public services to be working. And let's remember, from the previous government, we inherited school buildings that were crumbling, people not able to get an NHS dentist. Some people I met back in the general election campaign having to pull their own teeth out because they couldn't access that NHS dentistry. And so I think we've got to tackle those fundamental problems in the country. We've got to get the basics right. We have to sort out the horrific state of our roads. We've got to have a train service that functions well. We're bringing in that fares freeze on rail free care about. I am clear, though, that when we get to a general election, I don't think the Green policy offer will survive contact with the electorate. They are soft on defence, they're soft on national security, they're soft on issues around law and order, proposing, for example, the legalisation of things like Class A drugs. I don't think people in this country want that. Equally, I don't think that they want the divisive, toxic politics of reform as well. And so the Labour Party needs to chart that course, which is going to appeal to the mainstream of voters in this country.
Was it a mistake for Keir Starmer to block Andy Burnham? He might have had a better chance in this seat, mightn't he?
Oh, look, I'm not going to relitigate that, and I'm not going to get into pontificating on that. The National Executive Committee of the Labour Party took a decision that Andy couldn't stand because he was currently the Mayor of Greater Manchester. If he had stood and then there was a subsequent mayoral by-election, that would have been the equivalent of running 20 parliamentary by-election campaigns.
OK, but
it's a city region of 2.8 million people. I also think it does a disservice to our excellent candidate, Angeliki Stoyer, who threw her heart and soul into this campaign over the last few weeks. And so, look, we can't turn back the clock.
OK.
And I'm not going to get into
But the reason I'm
on that.
asking is that there will be people in your party that feel that Andy Burnham should have been the person to stand. They question Keir Starmer's judgment. There have already been calls for Keir Starmer to go. I mean, he's in a volatile, a dangerous position, isn't he?
We went through all of that 2 weeks ago. Every single member of the Cabinet came out in support of Keir. The vast majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party did as well. I think that the public want us to be focused on fixing the problems that are out there in the country, not fixated on ourselves. We can't make the mistakes of the last Conservative government who churned through prime ministers, causing huge instability. People used to say to me on the doorstep, you couldn't run a business in the way that this lot, the Conservatives, are trying to run the country. If the person at the top kept changing, you wouldn't ever get anything done. And so, yeah, I think that is why a couple of weeks ago you saw very significant support for Keir and the direction that he wants to take the Labour Party in. Obviously, the long-term decisions that we are taking to invest in public services and get the economy firing on all cylinders are going to take a little bit of time to be felt in people's day-to-day lives.
I do want to also ask you about the issue that emerged overnight. The election monitoring group, Democracy Volunteers, have talked about concerningly high levels of family voting, the illegal practice, basically collusion. That's been disputed by Manchester City Council, but Nigel Farage has condemned what he's called cheating. What do you make of that?
Well, Nigel Farage can speak for himself. Clearly, the reports that came in overnight are concerning. Elections must be conducted in line with electoral law. People should be able to vote in a free way and not subject to any coercion. And so it would be right that the appropriate authorities, including potentially the Electoral Commission, look into those reports.
A very quick question about assisted dying before I let you go. The government has said that they're not going to give the House of Lords more time to debate the assisted dying bill. Backers of the bill are accusing a small group of peers of deliberately blocking it by introducing a multitude of amendments. Those peers say they're doing their job, but is it right that the House of Lords may be able to overturn the will of MPs? What's your take on this?
Well, look, I'm someone who voted to change the law with respect to assisted dying, and whilst the government as a whole has a neutral position on it, I am firmly of the view that it is time to give people the right to choose. Now, I think that the House of Lords performs an important scrutiny function, but the House of Commons, the directly elected chamber, has made its view known on this issue. And so I would encourage peers to consider this in a timely fashion so that we can continue the debate when it goes back to the Commons.
OK, well, Heidi Alexander, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting to hear from the Secretary of State there, firmly behind Keir Starmer, leading the Labour Party going forward. There was always that question as to whether or not, with this result in the Gorton and Denton by-election, he would have to step aside, pressure from the leader of Scottish Labour saying he should. I do wonder if Reform had won this, whether or not the pressure would have been higher. The fact that they've lost to a party on the left, a progressive party, I wonder, opens perhaps a window for the Labour Party to go more in that direction, which some of his backbenchers would definitely want him to do.
However, they've been beaten by both those parties, both Reform and the Greens, so pressure on all sides for Keir Starmer.
Absolutely. All right, well, stay with us, because coming up next, we're going to have more analysis, of course, on that historic victory for the Green Party in the Gorton and Denton by-election.
So the Green Party have won their first ever parliamentary by-election with a 40% share of the vote in Gorton and Denton.
Yeah, Hannah Spencer is the new MP. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, has been crunching the numbers and has the latest now from the screen.
A victory for the Greens, a catastrophe for the Labour Party. It was their 38th safest seat for Labour. But now look at an electoral map redrawn in Gorton and Denton with the Greens over 40% of the vote. Reform second on 28 and Labour on 25. You only have to look at the scale of the swing. You can see that the Green vote really cannibalised that red Labour vote. That's going to worry a lot of Labour MPs. It's a pretty historic moment, to be honest. This is the 7th largest Labour majority overturned at a by-election. You've got some of those famous names in by-election history. This is since records began. So this is a seismic moment for the Labour Party. And you're going to hear Labour talk a lot today about how governments mid-term lose by-elections. But this is after a landslide. We've looked back at previous Labour landslides, and you didn't see a result like anything like this scale after the 2001 or the 1997 landslide victories for Labour. So there is an element of this being unprecedented. And this is the story at the heart of it. What's gone wrong with the Labour vote? All those people who voted Labour in 2024, well, only 38% of them now would vote Labour again, according to the polls. The Greens get 15% of the vote, Lib Dems get 9, Reform on 8. Keir Starmer is allowing his electoral coalition to split loads of ways. And now the electoral map is being redrawn again in this parliament with the Greens as a new force. They've never got more than 10% of the vote in a by-election before. This is their first ever northern seat. It is the first time they've ever won a by-election. And so I think Labour are going to have to think very hard about their strategy. Reform, pretty credible performance. They came, it's their third best Reform by-election performance, but not enough. And frankly, some in Reform seem quite angry. Nigel Farage on social media talking about sectarian voting and cheating. Now, the Greens have hit back and said that they want votes all across the constituency, reject sectarianism charge, and they did not win because of cheating. Worth pointing out this, it's fascinating. Gorton and Denton is the worst Conservative by-election performance that there has ever been in recent political history. And so that's quite an interesting change in the way that their performance works. But this is the result that we got shortly after 4 o'clock this morning, and just the sheer scale of the Green Party victory. They've got a ground campaign. They pulled it off in a way that Labour figures didn't believe possible, even in the last few days. Three-way party politics upending the way we think about things. I think it's going to be a very challenging time for the Labour Party.
Well, thank you for that, Sam. Look, can't have you here without asking you a question or two about it. What sense are you getting from those within the Labour Party about how upset they are about this? Would they be more upset had Reform had won?
Yeah, this is the worst outcome that could have happened for the Labour Party. We are well into a blame game that is going to stretch, I think, for the days and days. Look, the question for Keir Starmer is, has he been adopting the right strategy in the first 19 months of his time in power? He took a pretty hardline approach to migration, to other issues, to try and stave off that threat from Reform, which has been evident ever since he became Prime Minister. But at what cost? What we've seen today, the significance of this by-election, is that he bled votes to the left of his electoral coalition. Today, to the Greens. There's also challenges from the Liberal Democrats, from your party. The SNP look like they have roared back into contention in these Scottish elections that we're getting in a few months' time. That question of whether Labour is true to its values or whether or not it was speaking for the country and in some way managed to misfire its political machinery is the one at the heart. Can Keir Starmer now reset, or are the Labour Party going to want to find somebody else to spearhead that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so much pressure on him because so many kind of framed this as a referendum on his leadership, didn't they? And that decision not to put Andy Burnham up as Labour candidate, some people will also be looking at this morning. So great result for the Greens, but a lot of focus will be on Keir Starmer now, won't it?
That's right. Keir Starmer owns this election result. And the question is, how can he reset afterwards? Now, we will see Keir Starmer a little bit later today. At moments like this, in the past, after the Hartlepool by-election, he actually turned out later he considered resigning because things were going so badly. People will look at him when he appears in public, ask whether he has the charisma, the personality, the strategic direction to help this party get through a situation where they seem to be bleeding support in all directions. Can he do it? I think it'll be all eyes on us seeing the Prime Minister later today.
Indeed. Well, Sam, I don't know if you get to go to bed now, do you?
Doubt it.
Anyway, thanks for staying up for us.
All right, well, let's get the thoughts now and analysis of Professor Rob Ford from the University of Manchester. Professor Ford, thanks for being with us. I've seen some of your tweets, and we had you on a little earlier as well, so some of our viewers have been paying attention all through the night, all of them, of course, will have heard some of what you've got to say. But let's start with just your analysis of this result.
Well, I mean, this is an extraordinary result for the Greens. As Sam was just laying out, this is completely unprecedented for them. It drives a coach and horses through their previous by-election records. They never got more than 10% before. They've got 40% here. The whole by-election campaign here in Gorton and Denton was from the start between Labour and the Greens about who could present themselves as the stronger anti-reform candidate in a seat where the underlying demographics are pretty strongly on the left side of politics. And it seems that the Greens have decisively won that particular contest. They probably benefited from tactical voting, but I suspect they have also benefited from a great deal of dissatisfaction with the direction of the Labour government amongst the kinds of left-leaning voters that you get clustered here in this seat. Younger voters, social liberals, Muslim voters and other ethnic minorities, all groups who may feel that Keir Starmer's approach of often trying to sort of triangulate and show sympathy for the concerns of voters on the right, particularly reform-curious voters, what they hear is their voice being muffled and marginalised in the Labour coalition, and they've, it seems, used this by-election, as voters often use by-elections, to register their discontent with the direction of the incumbent government. Meanwhile, I would like to make one point about reform. If we go right back to the start of this by-election campaign, I pointed out that the seat was about 2/3 sort of left-leaning wards, 1/3 right-leaning wards. Reform have got about near on 1/3 of the vote. So they're actually pretty much where we would expect them to be, given that this isn't a very favourable seat for their politics. So I don't think this result means we can count them out either. I think it's very much in line with their polling.
So where does this leave Labour? Because obviously this area is, you know, safe Labour territory and has been for generations. They now find themselves in 3rd place. I was just talking to Heidi Alexander for the government, and she was saying, look, let's be honest, we are disappointed. But she said, but you can't read too much into mid-term elections. They quite often go against the government. So what's your analysis? Just how bad is this for Labour?
Well, I mean, yes, midterm elections go against governments, by-elections go against governments, but not as badly as this. Let's be frank here. There have only been 3 occasions in the last 44 years where Labour have fallen to 3rd place in a by-election in a seat that they were defending, and one of those was Rochdale, where they disowned their candidate. So if you count that out, this is only the 2nd time since Mitcham and Morden in 1982 that Labour have fallen from 1st to 3rd, and they've fallen from 1st to 3rd in a seat which started as one of their 40 or 50 safest seats in the country. This is not, on any metric, a good result for the Labour Party. You cannot just sort of yardstick it. Well, you can yardstick it against past results. It scores very poorly on any yardstick. This is a very, very bad result, a very emphatic rejection by voters. One other thing I noticed Heidi Alexander said was that essentially a lot of elections are now going to come down to who's the strongest party to fight reform. That is true, and that may benefit Labour in some seats. But there's another bunch of seats, including Heidi Alexander herself's old seat of Lewisham East and a bunch of other seats, where the Greens start in 2nd place to the Labour Party, and reform are absolutely nowhere, and there's no prospect of reform winning seats like Lewisham East. But now the Greens can go to those seats where they start in 2nd place and say, we are a credible challenger to Labour. If you want a different direction, there is no risk, unlike the risk that existed in Gorton and Denton, you can vote for us. And I think a number of the Labour MPs representing those seats will be quite worried about that prospect.
Professor Ford, final point, we don't have loads of time, but just on reform, we've heard from the leader, Nigel Farage, blaming cheating and sectarianism for this result. What do you make of that claim? And just on the candidate himself, Matthew Goodwin, I know that you know him quite well. He's sort of a thought leader for that kind of politics in the Reform Party. Why do you think they put him up in this particular seat where, as you say, it was unlikely they were going to win?
Well, I think that they didn't see much downside to putting up a provocative, polarising candidate with a high media profile, because they probably figured that their chances of winning the seat were pretty slim. But at least this would give them a chance to set out their stall with a candidate who was liable to garner a lot of attention. And I think on that front, it really is mission accomplished for them. I do think their reaction to the result is rather disappointing and disheartening. This is an emphatic win, 41% in a seat that's very socially mixed. So there's really no way I think one can credibly attribute a victory of this scale to the kinds of shenanigans that they seem to be pointing to. There's something a little bit Trumpian about this desire to undermine the legitimacy of an election result when you don't win it. Reform are very keen, and arguably very fairly so, to emphasise the will of the people in results when they win. But, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If they lose an election, they need to show that they, as good Democrats, they accept the legitimacy of the result. In this case, the voters of Gorton and Denton, unsurprisingly, given the demographics of the seat, said that Reform was not the party they wanted representing them. I think it would be good for the health of Reform as a party to accept that result and accept that this is a country with a diverse range of voters, a fragmented political system, and Reform are not going to win everywhere.
Professor Ford, really appreciate that analysis. Thank you for that. I'm sure we'll be probably seeing you again throughout the day. I hope you get some rest as well, Professor Rob Ford there. Really interesting, he talks about the sort of Trumpish nature of trying to delegitimise the vote when you lose. The Reform Party are continuing to lean in to that argument, so we're going to probably hear more about that.
Yeah, they're referring to this report by Democracy Volunteers, this group that go in to look at elections, who've suggested that there was a high level of, or concerning level, I think that was the phrase they used, of family voting, where there's basically collusion in the ballot booths. So we will hear more from that. We're going to hear from Reform themselves a little bit later.
We are, and just to say, Manchester City Council, who have monitors at these polling stations, said they were given no official reporting of that happening at all. So it's going to be something that continues, I think, to be discussed throughout the day. All right, now you've probably heard of the initiative Ask for Angela, well, at least I hope you have. The idea is if you ever find yourself in a situation that doesn't feel right when you're on a night out, you approach someone at the bar or restaurant you are and tell them and ask them for Angela.
That's right. It's sort of like a code, isn't it, to the people behind the bar. Well, to mark 10 years since the scheme was founded, new posters and resources are being shared with venues across the UK, which pay tribute to the real woman that it was named after, Angela Phillips. And here to talk about all of this is the founder of Ask for Angela, Hayley Crawford, who's with us. Hi. Very good morning to you, Hayley. Thanks so much for coming in. I think, first of all, we should remind the audience who Angela was and why you chose to set up Ask for Angela.
Yeah, so Angela Phillips was a woman that lived in Norfolk, and she was killed by her husband in 2012. My friend Laura was really good friends with Angela, and I saw the devastation that her being killed had. And so when it came to naming the safety scheme, I couldn't think of any other name other than Angela.
It's a great tribute to her. How successful has this campaign been, do you think? 10 years now since it was launched. Do you get reporting when people actually use it? Because we had some reporting, but unfortunately some bars and restaurants don't actually know about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do get some reporting, but the beauty of the scheme is that people can use it and they don't need to hang around and hand over their details and agree to speak to the media or anything like that. It's a safety initiative where they can discreetly get out. So we have heard feedback from people that they have used it. Bars have fed back to us that people have used it as well, and quite successfully. And it's gone global.
And 10 years, as you say, since you launched it, do you think the threat against... It's mostly aimed at women, isn't it, to protect women. Do you think the threats against women have reduced, increased? What's the situation? How badly needed is it still?
So the scheme is for everyone, but yes, you're right, you know, we do find that it is mostly women that use the scheme, and I don't know whether it's increased or whether our awareness is there. I mean, it's never been acceptable, but we probably accepted it a bit more years ago. I mean, I know that back in, you know, when I was in my 20s, being sexually assaulted on a night out, hand up the skirt while you're at the bar, quite normal. Whereas I think now we're less tolerant. And I think schemes such as Ask for Angela means that people are actually finding an avenue to tackle it there and then, rather than being assaulted and then waking up the next day and thinking, do I go to the police with this?
It's incredible how far we've come from that sort of thing, which thankfully I hope is sort of not happening very much anymore. We used to have naked people in newspapers every single day, didn't we? And we've moved on from that, thankfully, more respect for women, one would hope. How do you make sure there's more awareness about this sort of thing, this sort of scheme?
So at the moment, we're in the process of setting up a charity to support Ask for Angela, and we've released our website today as well, so that's gone live. And on there, there's free resources, free training, so there's no excuse why a venue can't actually implement the scheme. And I've actually, can I show you the poster?
We can, hold it up.
OK, so this is Angela. She's cartoonised, so it's taken from the families, one of the family's prized photos, and we've cartoonised Angela for the 10-year anniversary.
Oh, well, good luck with that launch and the website launch, and thanks so much for coming in and telling us a little bit about the campaign.
Thank you, Hayley. All the best. Thank you very much for being with us. All right, let's take a look at the weather.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the unsettled and mild weather will continue over the next few days, but tomorrow does look briefly colder. It's mostly mild out there now, with showers in the north and more general rain in the south. Southern Britain will stay rather cloudy this morning, with further outbreaks of rain. Northern England and the south and east of Ireland look overcast too, but it should stay dry there. Elsewhere, expect sunny spells, although the northwest will catch further showers, some wintry on the Scottish mountains. It'll be mild for most, with brisk winds in the extreme north and far south easing.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
All right, we're going to continue our analysis of that seismic result in Gorton and Denton. We're joined, I'm very pleased to say, by the pollster Lord Hayward for his thoughts on what happened overnight.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. Can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Cheap.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
So let's go back to the Gorton and Denton by-election and the Greens' historic win with Hannah Spencer, now the MP there. We're going to get the view now of the pollster, Lord Hayward, who joins us now. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for coming in. And we're actually going to start talking about one of the issues around this result, and that is the issue of family voting, because a group, an election group called Democracy Volunteers, has raised what they call a concerning issue of family voting that they say they witnessed across the polling stations, something that Manchester City Council say that they don't bear out that. But you know a lot about this issue, don't you? Because you're the person that pushed to make it illegal.
Yes. Democracy Volunteers are a voluntary organisation funded by Rowntree Foundation. They operate not only in this country, but they monitor elections in Holland, in Sweden, all over the place. They are a recognised independent organisation. They are given special access to all polling stations in a by-election. And yesterday they did what they do at other by-elections and other elections in this country, stand away from the polling booths, but monitor everything to check that it's being done correctly, that if you're disabled, you can get into the polling stations. Are people being asked correctly for their ID and these sorts of things? And they stand well away, they don't influence it anyway. And they issued a report at 10:01 last night saying they had never witnessed the level of what's called family voting in this by-election at any previous by-election in this country or anywhere else.
Yeah, they said that were 22 out of 45 polling stations. They saw observed family voting in 15 of 22 of those polling stations. But as Anna said, Manchester City Council said there's no official reporting. So are we in like a bit of a he said, she said type thing in that situation?
No. Democracy Volunteers publish their reports. They're accepted by governments, not only in this country but elsewhere.
Why didn't they go to the council at the time?
It's all right. No, that's they are not allowed to interfere in any way. They are there to monitor. So they record and report afterwards. So they have done precisely what the Electoral Commission approves them to do. So Manchester City Council's response, I'm afraid, is not correct because Democracy Volunteers could not interfere.
They shouldn't have raised it at the time with the election staff there.
No, they are there to monitor, not interfere.
Interesting.
So where do you expect this to go?
It'll be for all sorts of different organisations to take it up, but I'm really horrified at the level of family voting that Democracy Volunteers reported yesterday. And I'm hoping that the government, the Electoral Commission, the returning officers will all look at this report and say, this can't go on. We've got elections on May the 7th across the whole country, and we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
A quick thought from you. As a well-known pollster, we've got to get your view on we've only got about a minute, but your view on the overall result. What do you make of it?
Staggeringly good result for the Greens, no question about it. Disappointing for Reform, but a real problem for the Labour Party. The coming third is not an acceptable position in these circumstances, and by quite a big margin.
Robert Hayward, really appreciate your thoughts. As always, story's not longer this time, but I'm sure we'll get you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much for being with us. So, look, that issue of family voting, I think, is one that's definitely going to rumble on throughout the day as accusations remain there. As Lord Hayward had said, Democracy Volunteers did what they think is right and not interfering with the voting. Manchester City Council say that they should have got involved straight away, so...
Yeah, they say they have trained people who know what to look out for, so we will hear more and more on the result too, of course, at the top of the hour.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello and a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
I hereby declare that Hannah Catherine Spencer is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Gorton and Denton constituency.
An historic by-election win for the Green Party in Gorton and Denton this morning, topping a poll by more than 4,400 votes.
I can't and won't accept this victory tonight without calling out the politicians and divisive figures who constantly scapegoat and blame our communities for all the problems in society.
Well, there's joy for the Green Party leader Zach Palansky. Reform, who came second, claimed the win was the result of cheating. Labour languished in third.
Pakistan is in open war with Afghanistan, its defence minister says, as the countries exchange airstrikes overnight.
The US Secretary of War denied access to Anthropic's powerful AI tools. The company's boss says that he's worried that they could be used to spy on citizens and in autonomous weaponry. Hello, good morning, and thank you for being with us after what was a big night for the Green Party, who won their first ever by-election, sweeping to a 40% share of the vote in Gorton and Denton. Hannah Spencer is now their new MP, and she told Sky News that the victory was no surprise after hearing a desire for change to those she spoke to on the doorstep.
Well, let's show you more of the results. So the Greens secured 40% of the vote with 14,980 votes. Reform placed second with 10,578 votes. And a dramatic fall from the top for Labour, who've won in this area for almost a century. They came third with 9,364 votes. So here's some of what Hannah had to say in her victory speech.
Working hard used to get you something. It got you a house, a nice life, holidays. It got you somewhere. But now, working hard, what does that get you? Because talk to anyone here and they will tell you. The people who work hard but can't put food on the table, can't get their kids' school uniforms, can't put their heating on, can't live off the pension they worked hard to save for, can't even begin to dream about ever having a holiday, ever. Because life has changed. Instead of working for a nice life, we're working to line the pockets of billionaires. I lived in this constituency at one of the most difficult and challenging periods of my life. I saw how strong the community was at holding things together. But I saw how much harder life is when the things around you are broken. The litter, the fly tipping, the dirty air. And when I moved, it became even clearer, and this is why I am fighting for the community that I lived in and that I still work in. Because I absolutely refuse to accept that we should ever have to move and leave our communities for good schools, a thriving high street and clean air. And I will not accept a society where having more money gets you a longer life expectancy.
And that's Hannah Spencer speaking after the win. Here is the Reform candidate, Matthew Goodwin, who, despite coming second, was far from despondent. His leader, Nigel Farage, has now accused the Greens of cheating. He wrote this on X: "This election was a victory for sectarian voting and cheating. Matt Goodwin was a great candidate for us. Roll on the elections of May the 7th. It will be goodbye Starmer and goodbye to the Tory party."
Well, the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, told us this morning that just because they've lost a by-election, that doesn't mean that Labour will lose the next general election.
So there's no doubt that last night was a difficult and deeply disappointing night for my party, the Labour Party, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat any of that. What I would say to you, though, is that it's not unusual for governing parties to lose mid-term by-elections.
In such a safe seat and to fall into third, is that unusual?
Look, I don't think we should overinterpret this result. There is no direct read across from what happens in a by-election to what happens in a subsequent general election. And just because people yesterday in Gorton and Denton voted for a Green MP, it doesn't automatically follow that they want Zach Polansky to be their Prime Minister, or for that matter, Nigel Farage, which I think is the greater threat across the country.
Well, John Craig has been at the count all night for us, and I'm very pleased and slightly surprised that he's still up
still
for
standing,
us.
Going
there,
well.
John.
Go on, John.
Just how big a win was this for the Greens?
Well, can I just say, I think a lot of Labour MPs would say Heidi Alexander's being rather complacent in her interpretation of this result. And, of course, Labour are still making the point that reform are the real enemy, and they seem to be ignoring the threat from the Greens. Now, that was something that, first of all, Lucy Powell was saying to me in an interview in the middle of the night, and we heard from Anna Turley as well, the Labour Party chair, who's making the same point. A lot of people, a lot of the Labour MPs will say, look, reform, yes, they're a threat, but what about the Greens as well? Now, this morning, two senior trade union leaders, some of the two biggest trade unions, actually, Unison and Unite, the general secretaries, have really come out and really launched into very critical attacks on Sir Keir Starmer. Now, Andrea Egan, the fairly new general secretary of Unison, OK, on the left of the party, has said Labour is failing on every level, and the Greens are filling the gaps. And Sharon Graham, well known for her blunt speaking, has described the result as, in her words, a bloody shambles. She says Labour need now to ditch the gimmicks, get back to being Labour, not New Labour claptrap, not one that plays games but real Labour. Workers and families are hurting. She talks about the cost of living crisis being largely ignored, and she goes on to say, stop listening to your rich mates, start listening to everyday people. So that is from the two biggest trade unions, actually, big contributors, donors to the Labour Party, although Sharon Graham has made all sorts of threatening noises about the Unite disaffiliating. But there's going to be a real backlash, not just from leaders of big trade unions, but also Labour MPs. OK, on the left of the party, but there'll be fury amongst a lot of Labour MPs who fear that the Labour Party has made a mess of this campaign. First of all, many of them will say Andy Burnham should have been allowed to stand, but it was obvious, really, that Sir Keir Starmer didn't want him to, because, of course, he would have been a threat if he'd won the by-election. Now, Mr Burnham may be thinking this morning, phew, dodged a bullet there. Perhaps if I'd been the candidate, I might have lost. Although his supporters say if he'd been the candidate, he would have won. Secondly, it goes back to what Heidi Alexander's saying, Labour made a mistake by just concentrating all their attacks on reform and hardly laid a glove on the Green Party. And Greens came first, Reform was second. Even in the areas in Denton, where Reform was seen to be stronger, the Green vote held up pretty well. And, of course, in Gorton, where the Greens were known to be strong, they were well ahead of Labour. So it's been a disastrous campaign, a seat where they had a majority of 13,500. They've lost. Reform was second, 4,500 behind the Greens, and Labour even further behind. So when MPs are back at Westminster next week, there'll be a real inquest going on, but it's already begun with those senior trade union leaders on the attack. And Sir Keir Starmer, the message to him will be, look, you've got to change course here or get out. There's bound to be more calls for Sir Keir Starmer to go. Today, up in Scotland, the Scottish Labour Party have their conference. Anna Sarwar has already called for Keir Starmer to go. He was due to go and attend that conference. Now he's not, presumably been told to stay away, because, of course, the Scottish Labour Party are terrified they're going to get a drubbing by the SNP in the elections in May. So Labour, some cabinet ministers, I really do think, like Heidi Alexander, are guilty of complacency here, trying to say it's a mid-term by-election, governments lose mid-term. Yes, but they don't normally come third to a party that's never, ever, ever won a by-election before. So Labour have got some pretty strong soul-searching to do here, and the inquest is going to go on for some time here because it's a terrible result. But let's not take anything away from the Greens. Great result for them. I thought that the winner, Hannah Spencer, made a good speech, emotional speech, and I think really an authentic working-class voice. She sounded a bit to me like Angela Rayner, the way she was speaking there, and clearly she's going to be the 5th MP for the Greens in Parliament. A plumber from plumbing to Parliament.
Not too bad. John, appreciate you as always. 10-hour shift, that's. I think you deserve a good breakfast and a bit of rest. Thanks so much, John. See you soon.
Now then, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been crunching the numbers and has the latest for us now from the screen.
The first ever Green by-election win, a disaster for Labour in a seat that they held with over 50% of the vote at the last election. But 4 o'clock in the morning, that map was redrawn. Look at this. The Greens winning with a very healthy 40% of the vote. Reform UK on just below 29 and Labour in third on 25. Look at how the Labour vote here has been cannibalised by the Greens. That is the graph that's really going to be worrying Labour MPs, wondering what happens to their votes, to their seats as we head in. It's historic by any measure. This is a list of all the by-elections that we've had in history, the biggest ones, and here is the one that we had this morning, Runcorn and Helsby, here in that list, the 5th biggest Labour majority overturned. Now, you've heard from ministers already today that they think that this is par for the course. Governments lose their by-elections midway through a parliament. But I have to say, if you look closely, it's not quite the whole picture, because this is the scale of the defeat, 26% swing away from Labour to the Greens. We've never had anything like that this close out from a Labour landslide. Look, after the 2001 landslide, nothing like that in any by-elections. Ditto after 1997. And the reason that these bar charts are red is because Labour may have seen a bit of a swing away from them, but they still held the seat. And this is the story at the heart of it. What happened? What has happened to all of those 2024 Labour voters? Where have they gone? Well, 38% of them have stuck with the Labour Party. But that's not that many. 15% have gone Green, 9% have gone Lib Dem, 8% have gone to Reform. And these left-leaning parties are clearly eating into Labour's support. The question for many Labour MPs is, have the Labour Party, has Keir Starmer had the right strategy to this point? And we've got a new kid on the block. If Reform UK's emergence dominated the first 19 months of this Parliament, here we have the Greens. Here is the 40%. They've got more than 10% in a by-election ever. Their first ever seat in the north of England. It's such a landmark moment. It does redraw everybody's political calculations. Reform UK, well, they came second, and it's their third best by-election performance, but they're not happy. Look at this. Piece of social media from Nigel Farage. He said it was a victory for sectarian voting and cheating. Allegations about what's been going on in polling stations, but the Green Party clear. They said they won all over the constituency and reject that allegation. A little bit of a footnote. Where are the Tories? Well, up here, the worst ever Conservative by-election performance. Not one that Kemi Badenoch's going to want to dwell on. But here is the result again. This result is going to redraw British politics. It's a seismic moment for Keir Starmer. He's got to defend his strategy, set out what he's going to do next. The blame game is already underway. Where is it going to end?
Oh, Sam, thank you very much for that. So, look, we heard a bit from John there, some of the recriminations coming into his phone. I'm sure you're getting some of the same things coming in. What is the sense among those in the Labour Party as to Keir Starmer's position now? Would it have been worse for him to lose Reform, or is this just catastrophic all round?
I think there is no doubt that a loss to the Greens is the worst outcome for Keir Starmer because of that sense that for the first 18 months of his time in Number 10, Keir Starmer has been fighting to protect his right flank, stop votes bleeding to Reform UK. And then look at the result. All of these votes bleeding to the left now with a loss to the Greens. There is going to be panic. Now, the blame game's underway, but it's listen closely, because there are basically two factions slugging it out. There are those that think that Keir Starmer neglected the sort of left wing of his leadership, with his hardline position on immigration, Shabana Mahmood's indefinite leave to remain plans being blamed for Labour's defeat here. But others say, hang on a moment, we need to be where the British public is. If you start to move to the left, are you really saying that a looser immigration policy, higher borrowing, more spending is the right answer at this point? What are your actual alternatives? It's all very well to talk about Labour values. What does that mean in reality? This debate has got a long way to go. People will talk in broad brush terms, but, Kamali, the question must always be, forget the ideology, what are you actually saying should change?
Interesting.
Well, yeah, so a lot of soul-searching for Labour, but what about pressure on Keir Starmer himself?
Well, overnight, I got one more Labour MP saying that he should stand down. Now, that's significant, and they were a mainstream MP, not one from the left, but it's only one. And I'm not sure that there's a tidal wave about to hit. Could one of the potential leadership challengers actually leap in and maybe challenge Keir Starmer directly? Well, we'll ask around today. I don't feel that's the case at the moment, but could this be a moment? It feels to me like there's not long enough to change leader between now and the May elections, where they're going to be electing national leaders in Scotland and Wales. There are council elections in London and Manchester. The time is too tight. I think the most likely outcome is all of this throws forward to after the May elections. That is the crunch point, and that is when all the opponents will be readying their campaigns for.
Interesting stuff. Right, Sam, appreciate that analysis, as always. I said to John, you've been up all night as well, so maybe you'll get some rest now. Maybe. We'll see you again really soon. Thank you. Look, so just a fascinating moment for British politics, of course, as we have been saying, with this huge victory for the Green Party in Gorton and Denton. First time they won a by-election, the first time they've won in the north of England as well. Pressure will build on the Labour Party, as Sam and John both been saying, and on the Labour leadership as well. But the questions around the other parties as well, and exactly where they position themselves now, having lost out to the Greens.
Yeah, and so much discussion about the future of politics, this sort of, so many more parties, multi-party politics seems to be the way of the future. So many things to talk about. We're actually going to get more reaction right now as well to this by-election, because David Bull, chairman of Reform, has just joined us.
Good morning. Good morning. I think I left here 4 hours ago. I've been doing this all night.
I suspect you haven't slept.
I haven't at all, no.
So
welcome back.
Appreciate you. Disappointed with second?
No, actually. I keep saying I'm actually very pleased with our result, because actually we mounted a fantastic campaign, 5,000 supporters and members out campaigning, 1,200 getting out the vote. This is a very Labour area, let's be very clear about this. So really this should have been a fight between Labour and the Greens, but Labour was so busy fighting itself. The Greens campaigned on very strange things which really didn't have the resonance, and I'll come on to this in a minute, and this is quite interesting, on the doorstep. So they campaigned on Gaza, the legalisation of drugs, for example, LGBTQ plus sex education and so on. And actually, for us, so Labour, this was their 6th safest seat. For the Greens, this was about 121 on their target list. This is our 400th and 40th. So on paper, there's no way we should have done as well as we did. But we did do well. We came through the middle. Of course, I would have loved to win. But this morning, with a fairly cold and thoughtful head, actually we did tremendously well. We learn with every single campaign what we did well, what we did badly, how we can improve. But actually, for me, this is now about moving forward to the 7th of May, the other elections. There are some things from last night I do want to just flag as well.
We'll come on to some of those points.
OK, sure.
Later. A couple more questions from us if we come before you make your point about, I think you're going to talk about family voting.
Yeah.
Isn't it right, though, that you say that those topics, those policies didn't resonate with voters? The Greens won by 4,000 votes. And some of your policies, some of the divisive politics as described by, didn't resonate in that particular... So, did you put the wrong candidate up? Matthew Goodwin is a man who is known on that side of politics as being a thought leader in this area. Was you the wrong person for this particular...
I have to give him credit. He was fantastic. He worked so hard. He was out in all weathers for every single day of that campaign. He had a local connection as chairman. I want everyone to have a local connection with the constituency they stand in. He is an academic. He I think it's fair to say, made some interesting comments, which I have had discussions with him about.
Which ones in particular did you talk to him
Well,
about?
lots of things. For example, about what it means to be British, for example, came up a lot.
Well, he said that you can't be basically black or brown and be British.
I don't think he did quite say that.
Well, what did he say?
This is what the bit I can't quite understand. But the point was...
He said being British is more than a piece of paper. He also said that people who aren't white can't always be English.
Yeah, I didn't understand his reasoning, but the whole point was that it wasn't Reform Party policy anyway. The point is that...
You're stepping away from that idea of...
Sorry, am I?
You're disowning it, yeah, for reform.
Yes, I am, absolutely. So the point is, if you were born here, if you're British, you hold a British passport, you're British.
Let's talk about the issue of family voting. Nigel Farage has said this election was a victory for sectarian voting and cheating. What does he mean by that?
So I'm deeply nervous about this because the Green Party appealed to the Muslim vote. 33% of that constituency is Muslim. They printed their leaflets in Urdu. When I had them translated, it said some pretty unpleasant things about Reform UK, which were not true. But also, I then have to think, well, what sort of country are we living in when you have to translate a leaflet into a different language? The point about being in Britain is you should be able to speak English, and we need to be one cohesive community. I'm very worried about the siloed approach. So that's one thing. Just in terms of the cheating, this family voting is really interesting. So this was an independent organisation that was in there looking at the way people were voting. They believe it affected 12% of the cases they looked at. Family voting means that, say, the husband and the wife would go into the booth together. That's illegal. You're not allowed to do that. So there are questions I have about that. Is why was it allowed to happen? What were the people doing in the polling station? Why didn't they get told that is illegal? We need to find out what was going on there. There's also a worry about postal votes. And Nigel raised this in 2015, I think in Oldham it was, and then he raised it again in Peterborough in 2019. Richard Tice and I were in Tower Hamlets. We saw people carrying great swathes of postal votes. I'm worried about electoral fraud generally. Am I saying it changed the outcome of this election? No. But I think what we do need to do is to make sure that these elections, every election, is free, democratic and fair. And I just think when we've all had some sleep, we need to think about this very carefully because democracy is very precious.
But interesting you say you don't think it changed the result.
I don't think it did.
We should actually we've literally just had a statement just in and we're reading it at the same time as you will be hearing it. It's from the Electoral Commission. A spokesperson has just said, we're aware of the report. Electoral offences are a matter for the police. We encourage anyone who believes an offence has occurred to report it to the police. The statutory Electoral Observer Code of Practice says that electoral observers may bring potential irregularities, fraud or significant problems to the attention of elected officials on the spot. And we've had Manchester City Council saying they don't recognise...
no, no reports were made officially at the time. The democracy groups say that they, in line with international standards, didn't report it at the time. So things are going to be litigated. Just a couple of points from you, Dr. Bull. You talked about the leaflets in Urdu that said some terrible things. I mean, what's wrong with printing leaflets in a language that the community speaks? It doesn't mean they don't speak English.
Why don't people... Well...
It doesn't mean they don't speak English,
I'm just deeply nervous...
Maybe their second language.
I'm just deeply nervous that we're having siloed communities. As a medic, I worked in London, for example, where great swathes of the population don't speak English. That's not a country I think we should live in. I think the point is that integration relies on a common language, common values, common culture. People are welcome, obviously, into this country, but actually I do think you subscribe to values and a culture and a shared belief system.
Absolutely, but it doesn't mean that they don't speak English just because the leaflet's written.
OK, I'll take that point.
And Matthew Goodwin, your candidate, talked a lot about this by-election being a referendum on Keir Starmer. So to what extent do you think the votes that Reform gained were positive votes for Reform, or do you think it was all about giving Labour a bloody nose?
Both. Talking to people on the doorstep, many people said, I've voted Labour all my life, there's no way I can ever vote for them again. It seems that Labour has completely abandoned that community. We're seeing the desolation of the high street, for example, shops boarded up. People just feel very depressed. They feel there's no future. You're seeing sort of the Turkish barber shops, all that stuff, vape shops and so on. It feels like the heart's been ripped out of those communities, as far as I can see. Labour is in trouble. Keir Starmer is in trouble. He will now leave office. It's a matter of when he leaves, not if he leaves. The question is what happens now in terms of manoeuvring. So we fought that campaign, the legal fight, 4.5 million will now get people more, will get the vote on the 7th of May. So the question then is, do they move against him now? in which case they then face the run-up to the 7th of May elections, where they may well, and hopefully they will, get a bloody nose, or do they wait until after May the 7th? This is very dangerous time for Labour.
OK, you're concentrating on Labour. What about Reform? Have you underestimated the Greens? Have you got another challenge in future that you've got to take into consideration?
That's an interesting point. I certainly think in our target seats, the Greens don't really feature. There are some parts of the UK where they do, like North Norfolk, for example, but I think in other parts, particularly our heartlands of Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, the Thames Estuary, actually, even in the north, and I spent time going around, I've seen 7,000 people in 7 months in village halls, working men's clubs and so on. We are seeing a tremendous change across the country. I'm very optimistic, actually.
You got any issues with the campaign, David Bull? You know that some people who worked for Matthew Goodwin had posted racist commentary online. A guy called Adam Mittler had to step down, was removed because of that. Good. All right. Jackie Harris, who campaigned for him as well, was said to have posted things against Israel and in support of Nazi Germany. Others, Alana Vine, who previously worked as a Conservative councillor, also has promoted far-right messages online. Did he have the wrong people supporting him? And why do those people support
I mean, every political party has this. They all have
racists supporting.
Every political party has bad apples, and as chairman, I will not tolerate that. If I find anything like that, they are out. I've
got a whole list. There are loads of people that we could talk about. But you probably need to
if you look at the
think about getting rid of.
They equally have huge problems. So it is.
But with racism,
let me just explain this. So, for example, people who come to help a political party have not gone through vetting. They are just helpers. So, of course, it's going to attract all sorts of people. The minute I find that kind of behaviour, they are not welcome in that party. It is different if you apply to be a parliamentary candidate, for example, or a council candidate. You go through vetting, and we will find you. One of the issues that I've had over the last few months is actually trying to find people who haven't declared their social media. And this is going to become an increasingly important part. So that is something we are now doing. We're putting in huge steps to ensure that we know what people are posting on social media. And as I say, anything that I find derogatory, disgraceful, they're out.
You're talking about someone like Ian Cooper, who was Staffordshire County Councillor, who you have revoked his membership because of the racism that he posted online.
Correct.
My point again, why are they drawn to your party? And if you're going to start weeding this sort of thing out, aren't they just going to go and find a party that advances their ideas, like Advance UK, like that new one started by...
My job is to look after my party and to ensure that I have the best and brightest candidates who subscribe to our values. And so I'm not... Of course, they'll find other homes, but I can only look after Reform UK.
David Bull, we appreciate your time.
Thanks very much
indeed. Thank you.
Thanks for our questions. All right, let's go to Asia now, as the Defence Minister of Pakistan has said his country is now in open war with Afghanistan.
Well, the fog of war makes it difficult to understand exactly what's happening, but what we do know is that both countries have exchanged airstrikes overnight after a cross-border attack where 2 Pakistani soldiers were allegedly killed.
Our Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch has the latest.
This feels like a very significant moment after months of escalating tension between Afghanistan and Pakistan. You have heard there from the Defence Minister declaring open war with Afghanistan. We saw these attacks take place overnight, Pakistan saying that they are in retaliation against Taliban cross-border strikes that took place on Thursday. Now, Sky News has spoken to the Taliban's chief spokesman, Zabiullah Mujahid, and he has confirmed that areas in the capital, Kabul, as well as in the provinces of Paktia and Kandahar, were struck. So far, the Taliban say 8 people have died. It is hard for us to independently verify those figures, but certainly I think we can see this as a significant inflection point. Now, Pakistan accused Kabul of actively harbouring militants and encouraging and supporting militant activity and terrorist attacks inside Pakistan. And it has been a devastating period for the country. 2025 was the most deadly for Pakistan in a decade. And Pakistan is also accusing India of working with Afghanistan to effectively encourage this terrorist activity. So you can see there the dynamic of 2 countries with escalating conflict and a very fragile truce currently looking particularly precarious. That was brokered by Qatar back in October, but A month later, in November, after a series of talks, they weren't able to reach any kind of formal agreement. So we will have to wait and see where this goes next, but both sides of the border on high alert.
And Cordelia will keep us up to date with what's going on. And as we say, not always clear, and we're getting, testimony from each side, but she'll bring us all the latest. Do stay with us. We're going to be talking to the Green Party leader, Zach Polansky, shortly to get his reaction to their historic by-election victory. Now, time to get a reaction of the leader of the Greens to their by-election win in Gorton and Denton. Zach Polansky joins us now. Very good morning to you and congratulations, your first ever by-election victory. Just how important a win is this to the Greens?
It's an incredibly important win, not just for the Greens, but actually for Gorton and Denton and, frankly, the entire country, because this will transform the face of British politics. Hannah Spencer, someone who is a plumber, a plasterer, and now a parliamentarian, has put forward a platform of lowering bills, rebuilding our public services and protecting our National Health Service. Over 4,000 majority in Gorton and Denton. It's important to say this was the Green Party's 127th target seat. We've won this. It means that Green Party vote is never a wasted vote. There's no no-go areas. Right across England and Wales, you can expect to see more Green Party councillors and more Green MPs.
Zach Polansky, Kamal here, morning to you and congratulations on the win. You've said that Hannah Spencer put forward policies of lowering bills and protecting the NHS. You know that many are reporting that the vote was based on support for Palestinians in Gaza. Is that right? Was that a lot of the message from the Green Party candidate in this by-election?
Well, it's absolutely nonsensical that you can't talk about lowering bills and talk about domestic affairs at the same time as talking about the genocide in Palestine that our government isn't just complicit in, but actively enabling through the sharing of arms and intelligence. It's not that one has been focused on more than the other. Hannah Spencer and the Green Party have ultimately said it's only morally consistent to both talk about power and wealth in this country and tackling the super rich, and what I mean by that is multimillionaires and billionaires, and also at the same time standing for human rights and peace right across the world.
No mention of green issues, though, or barely. Are you moving away from your core platform?
Well, a genocide isn't particularly good for the environment as well as human rights. Ultimately, environmental issues run through everything. I talked then again about lowering bills. If we insulated every home in Britain that needs it, that would be a triple win. It would reduce people's bills, vital in the cost of living crisis, reduce emissions, vital in the climate crisis, and it would create hundreds and thousands of good green jobs. The Green Party, the only party that are joining the dots and putting all of these things together, which is why we're about to hit 200,000 members.
Zach Polanski, thank you for moving us on to your broader policy platforms. Let's go through some of the details of what green policy is all about. Legalising all drugs. How would that work?
Well, we need to regulate and control drugs. Right now, the UK has the highest death rate for drugs in the entire of Europe. That cannot be right. And the war on drugs has utterly failed. We're pushing drugs into back alleys and into street corners rather than taking a public health approach about harm reduction. And all that means is if someone has a problematic relationship with drugs, then the person who should actually be working with them should be a public health professional or a mental health professional who can help them with that. It is outrageous that the Prime Minister, during this election, chose to make cheap political attacks over what is such a serious issue. Yeah. There's an organisation called Anyone's Child who is made up of people who have lost their children, their grandchildren, their brothers and sisters to the so-called war on drugs. And they're saying we need to follow public health approach on this, as has been done in so many countries around the world. We're getting this wrong. That's bad enough. But it's even worse to have a Prime Minister who just isn't taking this seriously.
All right, well, give us the examples then in the countries where this has worked. What evidence base are you using to say that when someone turns 18, if they want to, they can find themselves heroin or cocaine?
Well, it's not about finding themselves heroin or cocaine.
If they legalise them, can't they get it when they turn of age?
Well, you're missing the key words there, which is regulate and control. And we can all have sentences where we miss out key words, but then we're not having...
So how would you regulate it?
Well, let's talk about Portugal, where they've decriminalised drugs. That's brought down drug deaths, it's brought down HIV transmissions, and actually it's largely been a success. That's around many countries around the world where people are coming together and saying where we have shifted things, we've made a difference. But the question we really need to ask here is it working right now? It's so obviously not working right now. Drug deaths in this year have increased every single year for the past 13 years. This is a public health crisis. When are we going to stop burying our head in the sand and go, actually, we need to listen to the experts here, public health professionals, and take a harm reduction approach?
Did you tell us, I don't think you told us, how are you going to regulate it?
We're going to make sure that it's in the hands of public health professionals rather than on street corners and alleyways. I think that's quite simple.
You're going to put the burden on the NHS to make sure that it's regulated, yes? OK, just make sure we're clear.
Well, who would you rather is regulating drugs? Would you rather we've got what we've got right now, where it's regulated by drug gangs and people, with nefarious intentions? Or would you rather it's regulated by people who actually understand these things and we can make sure that when people take drugs, they know what they're actually taking rather than being done by some drug baron?
I just want to ask you about one of the issues that's come up since polls closed. In fact, the election monitoring group, Democracy Volunteers, has talked about what they describe as concerningly high levels of so-called family voting in this by-election, essentially collusion, more than one member of the family going into a booth. Nigel Farage has said this election was a victory for sectarian voting and cheating. So what's your response to that?
Well, Nigel Farage is a sore loser and he just lost an election badly. I think more to the substantive point, though, Manchester City Council, who are obviously independent in this, have been really clear that there has been no irregularity. Police officers were at every single polling station and there's no finding that anything was seen or anything untoward happened. So actually, just once again, Reform are spreading misinformation and smears, and the press and the media seem to repeat them.
Well, I'm just repeating what Democracy Volunteers has said. Is that something that you're not concerned at all?
I don't think anyone had heard about Democracy Volunteers until yesterday. I think it's really important that the media and I'm talking to all media, by the way, I'm not just talking to you two, but take responsibility that when Reform or Nigel Farage says something, they don't just keep repeating it. And actually, I've been asked this several times this morning. Manchester City Council, who are independent, have been really clear that there's no irregularity happening. So why are we still having this conversation?
Look, if you're paying attention, I've been saying that this morning as well. So, look, it's going to be litigated, isn't it, Zach, as you know, because they're going to keep making that charge. Let me get back to some of your broader policies. Is it right that the Greens would legalise all prostitution?
Prostitution is not working at the moment because, again, just like drugs, women are being pushed into street corners. They're being pushed into the hands of sometimes pimps or very unsavoury people, as opposed to actually saying that if someone wants to be a sex worker, then that is their right to do it, as long as it's their choice and they're not being coerced into doing it. And actually, we do need to make sure that we have a social justice policy that puts women, if they're the sex worker, or indeed men, if it happens to be a man, at the heart of what they choose to do with their own body.
And further, your greater support for trans rights. How would you make sure that trans people in this country are better supported and protected?
It's really important because trans rights are human rights. And as a member of the LGBT community, a gay man, I grew up during Section 28. And I remember what it's like when schools say that you can't even talk about this. I've been really worried by Wes Streeting, the health secretary, and his increased, I would say, attack on the trans community, and more widely, to be honest, his relationship with healthcare, particularly the organisation Palantir, the US tech spy company that we're making deals with. I think it's really important that trans people are at the table and that they're co-designing, co-producing policies that affect them, particularly when it's around healthcare.
How was legalising drugs, legalising prostitution and greater protection for trans rights and trans people put to a Muslim community in Gorton and Denton?
It was put to a Muslim community and, in fact, frankly, the whole community, because the Green Party just ran an election there where they ran an astounding victory of over 4,000 majority.
Were those particular policies in your leaflets, your Urdu leaflets?
We had Urdu leaflets because people speak Urdu, and we had Bangla.
Those policies, were they in there, Mr. Polanski?
I mean, what's the assumption behind your question here? Because it sounds...
Well, conservative communities might not support some of those policies. We're not here to litigate whether or not they're right or not. I'm talking about conservative communities potentially might not be supportive of policies that legalise prostitution, drugs and increase rights for trans people.
I think there's some deep assumptions there about what a conservative community is, but here's what I would say more widely. I said it when I became the leader of the Green Party, is you don't need to agree with me on everything. You need to agree with core values and fundamentals of the Green Party and what I'm putting forward. If anyone agrees with me on everything, then that's weird. Actually, what we need to do is build bridges. And look, I'm really proud that a constituency as diverse as Gorton and Denton just voted for a female plumber by a party that has a gay Jewish man as a leader. What I saw on the streets of Gorton and Denton is communities coming together who are excited for an alternative, who want to see those bills lowered, who want to challenge this Labour government. And Manchester showed reform and its deeply divisive policies for door. And I'm proud to be Mancunian.
And you talked about Hannah Spencer being the new MP. Is there part of you that wishes that you'd stood in this seat?
I couldn't be prouder of Hannah Spencer, and no part of me wishes I'd stood in this seat. She just ran the most incredible campaign, and she's a plumber, plaster, now a parliamentarian, and the country is about to see what happens when you get a Green MP elected as she adds to our already growing group. And this is going to happen in 70 days' time, by the way, at the local council elections right across England and Wales, including the Senedd, where we're going to get Anthony Slaughter and Tessa Marshall elected, our first Greens ever elected to the Senedd. This is the Green Party's moment. We're about to hit 200,000 members. If you've enjoyed this interview, join the Green Party.
Mr. Polanski, so you've set a little bit of ambition there, but what about you? When are we going to see you in Westminster? Which seat are you targeting?
Well, I'm an elected member of the London Assembly, and I've lived in London for the last 20 years. So as soon as a by-election comes up in London, then I'll definitely consider throwing
even though you're a Mancunian, you would prefer to stand in London, would you?
I don't know if you missed when I said that I've lived in London 20 years.
Also, can you just clear something up? We had this question. When the result was announced earlier, there was a very long wait before we saw the returning officer, and in fact, before we saw you and Hannah Spencer herself. Can you clear up what the delay was?
We were waiting until the announcement was made.
Oh, OK.
Just waiting for the announcement? But we knew it was coming. Everyone was waiting for you in the returning hall.
They weren't waiting for us. We were waiting to hear if the announcement was about to start, and then we went there.
Fine. We were
cleared
curious.
Another one up for us, Mr. Polanski. You know what you're doing.
We were on the edge of our seats. Good stuff. Zach Polanski, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Look forward to speaking to you again. Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, we wondered what was going on, didn't we?
We did.
It was a very long
John
wait.
Craig was very upset about it all.
He was having to fill, wasn't he?
Exactly, having to fill in overnight. But it just turns out they were waiting to be told to come into the room.
Exactly. So let's move on, shall we? And we're going to turn to the United States now, because Bill Clinton is set to testify to a congressional committee investigating paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein today. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton was in the hot seat, the former Secretary of State, of course, giving evidence in a closed-door session, telling the media shortly afterwards that she wants to see the truth come out. Our US correspondent James Matthews has been following the story for us.
Hillary Clinton was dismissive of this process going into it. She called it partisan political theatre. That didn't necessarily change over the course of some 4 or 5 hours of questioning. She said the questions were repetitive, said at the end she was asked about UFOs. She came out, spoke to the waiting media at the end of it all. She was asked about her husband giving evidence today. She was asked about whether she was 100% confident there wasn't anything that he knew about Epstein's crimes. Her answer to that was an emphatic yes. She was asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, who is Epstein's co-accused, who attended the wedding of Chelsea Clinton, the Clintons' daughter, in 2010. That was after Epstein's conviction and after Virginia Giuffre, a victim, named Maxwell in a civil legal action. Why was she at that wedding? It's a question I put to her. Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to your daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? She'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the +1, the guest of someone who was invited.
It was a full-day session yesterday. It will be that and more. That's the expectation of members of this House Oversight Committee who will question the former president, Bill Clinton. Hillary Clinton, she said she didn't engage with Jeffrey Epstein. That's not the case with Bill Clinton. He had an association over many years with Epstein. While he was in power, Epstein was present in the White House on occasions. Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet, so many questions to ask him, probably more pointed than the questions put to his wife yesterday.
It's going to be fascinating when Bill Clinton gives evidence later on. Of course, we'll have coverage of it later here on Sky News. Right, let's take a look at the weather.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the unsettled and mild weather will continue over the next few days, but tomorrow it does look briefly colder. It's mostly mild out there now, with showers in the north and more general rain in the south. Southern Britain will stay rather cloudy this morning, with further outbreaks of rain. Northern England and the south and east of Ireland looked overcast too, but it should stay dry there. Elsewhere, expect some sunny spells, although the northwest will catch further showers, some wintry on Scottish mountains. It'll be mild for most, with brisk winds in the extreme north and far south easing.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Right, we're going to continue our coverage of that seismic victory for the Greens in Gorton and Denton. We're going to speak to Luke Trill from the group More in Common about the polling and what it actually means for British politics.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Stay with us.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching tonight on The Wrap. We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why. He did know what he was doing. Both agree on that, can we?
No.
No. Can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That
doesn't rule out strikes. I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News.
We located footage of the aid drop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza.
Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message.
Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
We can continue our coverage of that result in Gorton and Denton. Luke Trill from More in Common is with us now. Morning to you, Luke. Let's just start then, I guess, with your assessment of what we saw overnight.
Well, this was, there's no other word for it. This was a seismic result. The Greens have never got higher than 10.2% in a by-election before, and yet on Thursday they got 4 times that, 40.7% of the vote. And I think what it proved, beyond all reasonable doubt, is that the momentum which seems to have been building behind Zach Polanski, those higher poll ratings, he's actually managing to translate them into real votes on the ground.
Well, yes, Labour, in the meantime, have kind of acknowledged that it's a disappointing result for them, but they will say, they have said, this is a by-election, it's mid-term, that's what happens. People give the government a kicking at this point in the political calendar, so it's no big surprise. Do they have a point there or not?
Well, look, by-elections are often used to register a protest against the government. But what I would say is, we are quite early into their term. I think the second thing I'd say, and I think this is the thing which will worry Labour the most, is that this is the second by-election in a row where they haven't just lost the by-election, they've come third. There was that Senedd by-election in Caerphilly just a few months ago. This by-election, the same pattern. And what it does is it breaks down those sort of electability worries that people have about parties like the Greens or parties like Plaid, and makes it much harder for Labour to say it's a straight fight between us and Reform. And Labour were really banking on that some progressive voters would ultimately hold their nose and say, well, I've got to vote Labour because it's the only way to stop Reform. Now the Greens and Plaid in Wales can say, actually, we're the best bet to do that.
Interesting. Luke, talk to us a little bit about where the country is. Sam was giving us his analysis earlier, and I think it's accepted that the Labour Party have sought to try and tack to the right, to try and out-reform in some areas, and then got beaten up to the left in this particular by-election. But where's the country in that sort of thing? Where does the governing party need to position itself?
Well, this is the challenge, because what's happening, and the interesting thing is Gorton and Denton was almost a microcosm of what's happening to the Labour vote on a national level. You had that older, more white working class part of the seat swinging towards Reform. You had the student areas and areas with a large number of Muslim voters swinging towards the Greens. So the Labour vote is actually splintering into different directions. And you're absolutely right to say there's been a lot of focus on voters they're losing to the right, but as this shows, they're losing voters to the left as well. And the danger for them is that this starts to look a lot like what happened to Boris Johnson's 2019 coalition at the last election. The Tories got caught in this pincer movement where they lost votes to Reform on their right and at the same time lost votes to Labour and the Liberal Democrats. And it was very hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I think we might be seeing the same thing happening to Labour.
I don't think you can ever put Humpty Dumpty back together. I think that's the point.
That's a whole different interview.
He breaks.
Well, exactly. I think that's what he's saying. Yeah. So, but what strategy could Labour follow now? As you say, it's sort of perhaps lent towards the Reform voters, or trying to get people who might be tempted to vote Reform to look at Labour. How do they maintain that while appealing to the Greens as well? It's not possible, as you say, is it?
Well, look, there are some issues which run across that left-right divide, and the biggest one by far is affordability and the cost of living crisis. Whenever we do a focus group, including the focus groups that we ran in Gorton and Denton, it was cost of living that came up first and foremost. And of course, we've had some steps on that. We had the news about the energy price cap this week. Labour have done things like in the budget, freezing prescription charges and train fares. I think there needs to be a lot more of that to show people the government gets it, right? That people are still feeling the cost of living crisis. Ditto public services. And on issues like immigration, it is, yes, I mean, lots of voters across the spectrum want to see that we have control of the immigration system. They also want compassion as well, and also to ensure that, you know, people who come to the UK and contribute are able to do so. So it's striking that balance, and lots of those issues do span that coalition. But the number one is cost of living, and I think Labour really has to use another cliche, throw the kitchen sink at affordability if they're going to try and turn things around.
Luke, talk to us a little bit about the other parties that were standing in this election, thinking Lib Dems and the Conservatives as well. They're coming in a third and fourth. The Conservatives, I think, their worst ever by-election result ever. Is it just the case that this was never going to be a seat that either of those parties could win? Can we learn anything from their results?
Well, look, I mean, you know, this wasn't natural Lib Dem territory. I do think for the Conservatives, you know, there's a pattern of them being squeezed in these by-elections. They weren't particularly fighting for the seat. But, you know, the Conservatives are supposed to be, you know, their record is the most successful election-winning machine arguably in the Western world, and yet it's becoming harder and harder with every one of these contests for them to continue to maintain the claim that they're a truly national party. So they're going to need to start seeing some winning soon.
We've already, ahead of this by-election, seen a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister. I understand that we are going to hear from him at some point this morning. How much do you think that increase is? And to what extent have you done research to suggest that a different leader might get a different outcome for Labour?
Well, look, I'll be entirely honest. From the conversations that we had in Gorton and Denton, there is no doubt there was not just frustration, but in some cases a great deal of anger towards the Prime Minister over his handling of the cost of living crisis, the fact that people felt not enough was being done on cost of living, but also, this was particularly with some of the Muslim voters that we spoke to in the East, a sense that since the 2024 riots, they just said it's almost like racism's become legitimised.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hello and a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
I hereby declare that Hannah Catherine Spencer is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Gorton and Denton constituency.
An historic by-election win for the Green Party in Gorton and Denton this morning, topping the poll by more than 4,400 votes.
I can't and won't accept this victory tonight without calling out the politicians and divisive figures who constantly scapegoat and blame our communities for all the problems in society.
Well, there is joy for the Green Party leader, Zach Polansky. Reform, who came second, claimed the result came about because of cheating. Labour languished in third.
Pakistan is in open war with Afghanistan, its defence minister says, as the countries exchange airstrikes overnight.
And the US War Secretary denied access to Anthropic's powerful AI tools. The company's boss says he's worried about their use to spy on citizens and in autonomous weapons.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Big story this morning. The Green Party have won their first ever parliamentary by-election, sweeping a 40% share of the vote in Gorton and Denton. Hannah Spencer is the new MP, and she told Sky News the victory was no surprise after she said she'd heard a desire for change on the doorstep.
Yes, quite the moment. Let's take you through some of those results in a bit more detail. Hannah Spencer won with 14,980 votes. Reform, second, with 10,578, and Labour came in third, a huge drop, with 9,364. Looking at the vote share, the Greens recorded their most dominant ever result, winning with a 40% share of the vote. And a big margin between them and their nearest rival, Reform, who secured 28%. When we look at the change in share, we see the collapse of the Labour vote. The general election in 2024, Labour had more than half of the vote share. That's been cut in half, and they got just 25% in total. The swing to the Greens in what was seen as a very, very safe Labour seat was 26%.
Yeah, it's a big swing, isn't it? And there, for every twist and turn at the count, and long afterwards, was our chief political correspondent, John Craig. He said this.
I hereby declare that Hannah Catherine Spencer is duly elected Member of Parliament for the Gorton and Denton constituency.
An historic victory for the Green Party, winning their first ever parliamentary by-election. Their leader was jubilant, and now a Manchester plumber, Hannah Spencer, moves from plumbing to Parliament, becoming the party's 5th MP.
Now, something exciting is definitely happening. And I invite you all to be part of it. Come and join the Green Party so that we can spread hope and win everywhere across the country. Our strength will grow as more and more of us come together. We defeated the parties of billionaire donors. We have shown that we don't have to accept being turned against each other at all. And we did this with the people who live here, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, just as we have always done in this constituency.
The result, announced at 4:30 a.m, is a catastrophic blow for Labour, though, pushed into a humiliating third place by Reform UK. An historic night in British politics as the Green Party wins its first ever parliamentary by-election. And the party's high command admitted the Greens fought a better campaign than Labour.
I think what is really clear is that there is a big majority in this constituency that hasn't voted for reform, and on the day the Greens have managed to win that argument that they were best placed to do that. But I'm not sure whether that would totally translate in a general election. We'll have to wait and see.
This result will pile even more pressure on Sir Keir Starmer, who campaigned briefly in the by-election on Monday. Furious Labour MPs will now step up their demands for him to change course or step down.
Well, please say John joins us now, even though I sent him off to bed and breakfast.
I know.
Last hour, he's back with us.
Very short sleep.
Good for you, John. So look, we're going to hear from the Prime Minister, aren't we, pretty soon?
Yes, we believe so, yes. I mean, he's going to face some tough questions because there are plenty of Labour MPs and senior trade union leaders who are bitterly criticising the Prime Minister this morning after that drubbing by the Greens, and also pushed into third place by Reform UK. Now, a couple of bits of breaking news. The Reform UK candidate, Matt Goodwin, and indeed Nigel Farage, have accused the Greens of cheating. Now, what they're referring to there is a report that came out after the polls closed last night by a group calling itself Democracy Volunteers, alleging what they call family voting. Some members of families being coerced, if you like, or pressured into voting a certain way. Now, the Electoral Commission has just issued a statement in the last half hour or so, saying we are aware of the report. The electoral offences are a matter for the police. We encourage anyone who believes an offence has occurred to report it to the police. The statutory Electoral Observer Code of Practice says electoral observers may bring potential irregularities, fraud or significant problems to the attention of elected officials on the spot. Now, last night, when this row broke, the council, Manchester City Council, and the returning officer said, well, Democracy Volunteers should have raised this during the day rather than waiting till after the polls close. Now, there will be plenty who argue that the Electoral Commission, which critics say is a rather toothless organisation, should have actually done something a bit more than just say, oh, report it to the police. So that is where that's going. I can also clear up, for the benefit of you two, who were very concerned about the delay in the election result at about 4:30 this morning. What happened was, because we checked this when we were leaving the count around about, I suppose that was about 5 or 6 a.m. What happened, we were told, was that Hannah Spencer, the winning candidate, didn't have a pass to get into the building. Because she'd actually given it to one of her team to look after. And that was what held everything up. So it sounds as though the winning candidate, the future MP for Gorton and Dent, wasn't actually allowed into the count. That's what we were told, anyway.
I'm glad that you didn't tailgate.
That was part of the farce of what happened in the early hours of this morning. But I mentioned trade union leaders criticising the Prime Minister. That the leaders of Unison and Unite have bitterly attacked the Prime Minister. For example, the Sharon Graham, for example, who is always very outspoken, has talked about a bloody shambles. She said Labour need to ditch the gimmicks, get back to being Labour, not new Labour claptrap, she says. Not one that plays games, but real Labour. So the Prime Minister will no doubt have to face questions about the criticism from Labour MPs, from trade union leaders, about why they came third. Now, what clearly seems to have happened, and what did happen, is that Labour spent all their time attacking Reform UK. Critics will say they took their eye off the ball and ignored the threat from the Green Party. Or if you look at all their literature, if you listen to the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's Questions every week for the past month, it's been attacking Reform, not the Green Party. And the Green Party, of course, have swept to victory. Reform was second and Labour a third. Humiliating defeat for them. Crisis for the Prime Minister again. Perhaps we should mention that the Tories and the Lib Dems lost their deposit. But it's a great triumph for the Greens. First time they've won a by-election ever. And they've now got 5 MPs in Parliament. And as we've heard from the winning candidate in her quite emotional victory speech, she sounds like a very much authentic voice for you might say the working class, for ordinary communities, people who are struggling. She talks about people struggling to pay their bills. And clearly she impressed the voters. You can argue that perhaps that the Greens played on the Gaza-Palestine issue. She didn't really mention that too much in her victory speech. She talked more about what you might call bread and butter political issues that matter to people in the constituency. So, great night for the Greens, not great for Reform. They were pushed into second place. Terrible night for Labour, and the inquest will begin now as to why they concentrated so much on Reform and ignored the threat of the Greens.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of soul-searching after that result for Labour, isn't there? So, John, are you going to bed now? Is that it?
Go for breakfast, Anna.
Breakfast, priorities.
in the right order.
Enjoy, have a very
Appreciate
big
you, John.
one.
And thanks for clearing that up about why they were late.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I suppose that was kind of right then, that they weren't able to get in. They waited to be called in because they needed to have the pass to
maybe
get...
that's it.
I'm being generous to them, but anyway. At least you didn't tailgate in, as we see all the signs around our office, that you're not allowed to do that.
No,
You have your own pass.
absolutely not. Let's delve into some of the detail of last night's result now, shall we? Our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has been crunching the numbers and has taken us through them.
The first ever Green by-election win, a disaster for Labour in a seat that they held with over 50% of the vote at the last election. But 4 o'clock in the morning, that map was redrawn. Look at this. The Greens winning with a very healthy 40% of the vote. Reform UK on just below 29 and Labour in third on 25. Look at how the Labour vote here has been cannibalised by the Greens. That is the graph that's really going to be worrying Labour MPs, wondering what happens to their votes, to their seats as we head in. It's historic by any measure. This is a list of all the by-elections that we've had in history, the biggest ones, and here is the one that we had this morning, Runcorn and Helsby, here in that list, the fifth biggest Labour majority overturned. Now, you've heard from ministers already today that they think that this is par for the course. Governments lose their by-elections midway through a parliament. But I have to say, if you look closely, it's not quite the whole picture, because this is the scale of the defeat, 26% swing away from Labour to the Greens. We've never had anything like that this close out from a Labour landslide. Look, after the 2001 landslide, nothing like that in any by-elections. Ditto after 1997. And the reason that these bar charts are red is because Labour may have seen a bit of a swing away from them, but they still held the seat. And this is the story at the heart of it. What happened? What has happened to all of those 2024 Labour voters? Where have they gone? Well, 38% of them have stuck with the Labour Party. But that's not that many. 15% have gone Green, 9% have gone Lib Dem, 8% have gone to Reform. And these left-leaning parties are clearly eating into Labour's support. The question for many Labour MPs is, have the Labour Party, has Keir Starmer had the right strategy to this point? And we've got a new kid on the block. If Reform UK's emergence dominated the first 19 months of this Parliament, here we have the Greens. Here is the 40%. They've got more than 10% in a by-election ever. Their first ever seat in the north of England. It's such a landmark moment. It does redraw everybody's political calculations. Reform UK, well, they came second, and it's their third best by-election performance, but they're not happy. Look at this. Piece of social media from Nigel Farage. He said it was a victory for sectarian voting and cheating. Allegations about what's been going on in polling stations, but the Green Party clear. They said they won all over the constituency and reject that allegation. A little bit of a footnote. Where are the Tories? Well, up here, the worst ever Conservative by-election performance. Not one that Kemi Badenoch's going to want to dwell on. But here is the result again. This result is going to redraw British politics. It's a seismic moment for Keir Starmer. He's got to defend his strategy, set out what he's going to do next. The blame game is already underway. Where is it going to end?
Well, Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates to our political editor now, Beth Rigby. Beth, morning to you. What's your sense of what we saw overnight?
Well, Kamali, I don't often use this word in politics because you have to weigh your words carefully, but I do think that this is a seismic moment, and I'll explain why. It's one by-election, but when it comes to the Green Party, it shows a momentum that has really catapulted them onto the national stage in a meaningful way. They have contested 87 by-elections. They've never before got more than 10% of the vote. And in this by-election overnight, they have won 40% of the vote. That's up 25.7 percentage points on their result in the general election in this constituency. And that tells you that something here is shifting, something is moving. It shows really that the Greens have become a really serious force for progressive politics in this country, and Labour will try to play this down. But when you listen to Hannah Spencer, the new Green MP, the 5th Green MP, her acceptance speech, it wasn't really talking about environmental policies. She was talking about left-wing politics, the sort of politics that turned people on to Labour under Jeremy Corbyn. She was talking about ordinary people working to line the politics of billionaires, saying something has to change in this country. And that has resonated with voters. And so the Polanski surge is real, the Green surge is real, and that is a massive headache for Labour as they are squeezed on the left from the Greens and on the right from Reform. And if I come to Labour, quite simply, this result is a gut punch for the Labour Party. I was at the count last night. I spoke to some Labour sources going into that count and that result coming in the early hours of the morning, and they were pretty confident. They thought that they had a chance of holding this seat where they had a 13,000 majority, or at least come in second. That didn't happen. They came in third behind the Greens and Reform. And their recriminations are already starting. There is criticism from some in the party, notably Richard Bergen, on the on the left of the party, criticising the leadership for blocking Andy Burnham, talking about factional politics, blocking Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, from standing and costing the seat. So that's all beginning. And then from the unions, they are angry this morning. I mean, the Fire Brigade Union, they have said that they need a radical rethink and they need to do it before the May elections or Starmer's time is up. So criticisms there. Unison has said the Starmer government is, quote, failing on every count. And Harriet Harman, on our podcast, Electoral Dysfunction, which is coming out shortly, we recorded it very early this morning, she was talking about this being a bruising result and saying that, of course, Labour MPs, activists, candidates are going to be very, very apprehensive now going into the May elections. And then the final point is, what is the bigger picture in all of this? Yes, it's one by-election, and yes, Labour will say incumbents don't win. Indeed, one Labour source was saying to me this morning that in the David Cameron coalition government, out of 21 by-elections, they lost 20. But equally, look to Blair. He won some. He lost some, but he won some. Look to Boris Johnson. You might remember him winning Hartlepool when he was the incumbent. So it doesn't follow that they do this badly in by-elections, and it reflects the state of the Labour Party with the country. And then the bigger picture is this emergence of multi-party politics, which we saw in the general election, and now it is being turbocharged. The two big traditional parties in this by-election took about 27% of the vote. Reform and Greens took 70% of the vote, and it was a high turnout for a by-election. And what does that tell you? It tells you that the traditional politics, the two-party politics, voters are rejecting it. Now, the hope for Labour will be that come a general election, people will vote differently and come back to who do they want to be Prime Minister. They won't use it, as they would argue, as a protest vote. But actually what this reflects is this trend in which people dissatisfied with the record of the Conservative governments and now of the Labour government are looking at different parties, and Reform is a beneficiary, The Greens now are also becoming a serious force. So this is a real strategic dilemma for Labour because they are being squeezed on both sides, rather like how the Conservatives were squeezed in the 2024 general election. So we are going to hear from the Prime Minister later today. I imagine he will say something like, it's disappointing, but don't read too much into the results. But his party will be reeling from this. They will be despairing, and there will be questions about him and his future. And as you look towards the May elections now, well, it is squeaky bum time for Labour.
Indeed. Beth, appreciate you. Thank you for that. We look forward to Electoral Dysfunction. As you say, the podcast will be dropping pretty soon for more analysis on what this all means.
Yeah, really interesting times. We've talked to a lot of the politicians this morning. We haven't talked to the Tories yet. We're going to do that.
Coming up next.
Yeah.
Look forward to that.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
All right, we're going to continue our analysis of what happened overnight in that Gorton and Denton by-election. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers, for his take on what happened overnight. Matt Vickers, good morning to you. Thanks very much for being with us. 706 votes.
Well, the reality is, Kamali, everybody at home knows what happens in by-elections. Everybody rallies around the people in that particular seat, on that particular day, who are in contention and in with the best shout. You look at the Labour Party. The Labour Party has got a whopping majority in government at the last general election. A couple of years before that, we had the Chesham and Amersham by-election. Well, Labour fell from 13% down to 1.6%. Significantly worse than that, actually.
Yes.
That's what happens in by-elections. People at home know that's what happens. We know that's what happens. The big message yesterday is about that that Labour vote share. This is a safe Labour seat. They've held it for decades. Super safe seat. They should have been walking this. They've gone back there today with a real message. Before the election, there were Labour MPs who said that losing to the Greens would be existential for the government. We've already had a Labour MP come out this morning calling for Starmer to go on the back of this result. It's because those people who previously voted Labour in droves have been let down. Broken promise after broken promise. The farmers, the pensioners, the small business people, anybody who pays council
come on,
tax,
I've given you the chance
let
to
down
give
by
them a
this
kicking.
government.
Right, so
and they sent a message to them yesterday.
Last time you got 2,888 votes. We spoke to Luke Trill earlier, and he said that, look, of course, you weren't expected to win in this particular seat. It's a Labour stronghold, maybe 100 years in parts of that constituency. But what this does show, this loss again for the Conservative Party coming in fourth, is that nationally, you guys are really, really struggling. And if you can't be more competitive nationally, then you're never going to win in the general.
So again, you said we came fifth last time. This is a by-election. This is not representative of the country. You're expecting Zach Polanski to march into Downing Street tomorrow. This is not representative. Everybody at home knows this is a by-election.
So we just brush it off, do we?
There was two things that happened yesterday. In fact, 24 hours before, you would have been talking about the chance that Labour might hold it, the Greens could take it, or even Reform. Reform would be very disappointed this morning with that result. They claimed they could win this. They've thrown their kitchen sink at it. We actually had a good local candidate who would have been a brilliant MP, but we knew what was going to happen in this by-election. It wasn't our fight. The big message is about what Labour have been told by the electorate. So we're a safe seat.
Where is your fight then now? What are you going to do? Because it's 100 and how many MPs have you got now?
We've got plenty, and we're working hard to get
just over 100.
Yes,
and you're not winning. And again, sorry, back to the point. Again, you're not winning nationally. Don't you need to broaden the Conservative church if you're ever going to get back into power?
We are winning in parts of the country. We are making progress, but the reality is, at the last general election, we got a good kick in. The electorate sent us a message. We've gone away, we've dusted ourselves down, we've looked at what they have to say. Yesterday we had MPs gathered together looking at what our plans are to take it forward. We're actually the people holding the government to account. It's us that have forced those files, the Keir Starmer to release those files about Mandelson and Epstein. It's us who've been fighting this group for this grooming gangs inquiry. It's us that have forced that U-turn on the family farm tax. U-turn after U-turn. Kemi is holding him to account, but more importantly, there's a big decision to be made at the next election. At the moment, this government is trashing our economy. 24% more people unemployed. Graduate recruitment at a record low. We need to sort this economy out. We need to fix it. At the next election, people will have the choice between Labour and Reform. Don't know what they're doing on welfare. They're letting this bill grow and grow and grow. People who work hard and do the right thing. If you work, you pay more and more in tax. If you don't work, you get more and more in benefits. Kemi is the person with the backbone to make them tough decisions.
All right,
make sure it works to pay.
As we know, inflation is coming down, and there's a chance that interest rates will be cut as well. So the economy, that they would say, is actually going in the right direction because of the decisions.
Tell that to the people who don't have a job.
Let me get to my question. In the direction that they would think. Now, one thing that your leader did go on in PMQs was student loans and forcing a change in that. What do you think? What is your policy on student loans? What do you want to actually happen for those students who are on that Plan 2 loan?
So we think we also the other difference between us and the other parties is that we tell you how we're going to pay for something that we're going to change.
I mean, let's be fair though. It's taken you a while to come up with the policy. She kept saying for a long time, we're not going to come up with policies on the hoof. We're going to wait and take our time. So now you've got them, now you're firm and confident in them. Yeah.
So we have said it is not fair for these people who are paying these loans to see these huge increases. In what they're having to pay. They're paying ever and ever more, and the amount they owe is not getting any smaller. It is unfair. It doesn't work. People who've invested in their future, took that time, took that loan on, and want to do better for themselves should be supported. We've said that those people who are on courses that are not worthwhile, people who go to university, get saddled with debt, put a lot of work into a course that doesn't actually provide them with a job at the end. We said we should review that, we should look at the cost of that, and we should instead be investing more in apprenticeships so people can get real skills and real jobs, and we should be reducing the cost to these poor students who've been trapped with these debts.
Now, your plan sees a £47 billion cut to welfare. Is that the amount of saving?
It's £47 billion of cuts overall.
And how much are you going to cut welfare?
A huge amount of welfare, 28 billion. We've said welfare. We've said we're going to reduce the size of the civil service back to where it was in 2016. We've said that people with, actually making the welfare system fair, actually, on the people who work hard and do the right thing. We've talked about the two-child cap.
Yep.
People who work, who are having families, have to make decisions about how many children they can have. People who don't work should be having to make the same decisions as well.
There are some think tanks, some respected think tanks, that say some $2 billion at least can be brought into the economy if you allow asylum seekers to work while they're here for their processes going through. You're shaking your head already. That's not something you'd even consider.
Not at all.
Considering the amount of money it would bring into the economy.
No, this country's borders are broken. We need to fix the problem. That means discouraging people from coming to the country and breaking in. We need a system with robust borders, actually. We said on welfare we should reduce the amount of money that we're paying out in welfare. You know that most of those
who seek asylum
foreign
end up getting is like 2/3 of those who are going through the process end up actually getting asylum. So why not have them working now, paying taxes, so you can increase the tax take?
Not at all. It's another reason. The reason people are getting in those boats and coming in here, coming to this country, is because we are a soft touch. We are a soft touch in allowing them to take benefits. We're a soft touch in allowing them to work illegally. If you come to this country illegally, you should be detained and deported. You should not be allowed to stay. No ifs, no buts. We shouldn't do anything to attract them, and we should be doing everything to prevent them. The only people who come here should be the people who are allowed in illegally, as decided for by Parliament with the laws that we put in place.
You sound like a Reform MP there. Did you not reform enough while you were campaigning in Gorton and Denton? They came second. Why didn't you have that message
When
there?
I go out to my constituency and I talk to people who are struggling to get on the housing ladder, who've seen the huge pressure caused to public finances, to public services as a result of uncontrolled immigration, they tell me this has to be sorted. We saw what happened with legal migration. The last government made lots of mistakes on immigration.
The Conservative government, that Boris
The last government
wave.
made lots of mistakes on immigration. But when it came to legal migration, we said you can't bring your nan and your dad and your gran. It was the right thing to do. The legal migration numbers fell.
And they're coming down still, aren't they?
We said we should have a salary threshold that requires people to be able to pay for the people that bring into the country. That would have brought us down further still.
You talked way longer than I thought we were going to, because you came fourth in that election. But it was good talk anyway. Matt, appreciate you. Thank you very much for being with us.
And we're going to talk more about the election.
Are we?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
With the Labour peer, Baroness Hazarika. That's coming up after the break. So let's get more reaction now to the by-election overnight. We're joined now by the Labour peer, Baroness Hazarika. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning. Clearly an amazing result for the Green Party, but let's focus on Labour. What's your sense from talking to people in the party of just how badly this has gone?
It was a terrible night for Labour. There's no point spinning it any other way, and it was a very strong result for the Greens. And I think the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, his team, the sort of strategists are going to have to reflect and think deeply over the weekend about what this means. I think it's not good enough just to say, oh, this is just a by-election, it was just a blip. I think there are important lessons to be learned from this. I think the Labour Party, I'm also a journalist and a broadcaster myself. I think the Labour Party and the broadcast world, and journalism, myself included, has become very obsessed with the right of British politics because what's happening with reform is very interesting. I think there's been quite an obsession about sort of chasing the reform dragon. And actually, Labour is losing votes to the Greens, and progressives are looking at the Green Party. And I think that's something that the Labour Party is going to have to reflect on very strongly.
Well, Baroness Hazarika, morning, it's Kamala here. Is that the message to take from this, that there is space on the left of politics for the Labour Party to move into? And just a thought, would it have been worse to lose? You came third anyway. Would it have been worse to have lost to Reform?
Well, I think, losing is very bad because that's a seat that Labour's held on to for a long time. I mean, look, it's very difficult to know what a counterfactual would be. There are going to be big elections coming up in May, so we'll see that'll give us a snapshot of how voters are feeling. But look, Labour's got to really think, what is happening? Why is it that Labour is not connecting with voters at the moment? Obviously, Labour inherited a very, very difficult set of circumstances. We all know that. The Conservatives wouldn't have been sort of booted out so decisively if everything was great in the country and it was a good ship lollipop. But at the same time, clearly, Labour is not connecting with voters. It's not telling a story of the good things that the Labour government is doing. And there are good things, like there are signs of improvement in the economy, in the NHS, but also mistakes have been made as well, things like the winter fuel allowance. I think one of the things that people are struggling with Labour at the moment, and I was out in Scotland last week, door knocking, big important elections coming up in Scotland. I think a lot of people are just sort of struggling to understand what is it exactly that Labour really stands for. They know what Reform stands for, they know what the Greens stand for, they kind of know what the Conservatives stand for, even though there's still a lot of anger with the Conservatives. I think Labour's got to do a much better job at really thinking about that and defining it and making it clear to people what it is we stand for as a party.
Yeah, and Aisha, you talked about how there's sort of been a focus on the threat of reform. So how does Labour work out what it should stand for if it's going to try and be a broad church and appeal to reform on the right and the likes of the Greens on the left? That's a really hard thing to do, isn't it?
Do you know, it is a really hard thing to do, and it's very easy being an armchair commentator. It's much easier doing, my job as a backbench peer and as a broadcaster than it is actually doing these things. So let's not kid ourselves that this is easy. But I think instead of trying to do everything by sort of focus group and everything sort of looking at kind of data and spreadsheets in Downing Street and thinking about it in a really calculative way, and maybe this sounds a bit Pollyanna-esque, I would like Keir Starmer and his team to actually sit down and think, right, what do we think is the right thing to do? What do we believe in our hearts is the right thing to be doing for the country right now? What do we believe, thinking about our Labour values and what the country needs, instead of triangulating, oh, let's go to the right on this, or what we shouldn't now see is a lurch to the left, because that in itself is cynical and the wrong thing to do. It's about sort of looking at the problems facing the country, looking at what your values are and thinking, right, do I actually believe in this? And do I think it's the right thing to do? And it is difficult. There are lots of challenges facing this country, but politics also requires a degree right now of courage and authenticity. You can't sort of triangulate your way out of this very fragmented political landscape that we're seeing. The people who benefit and will do well are people who have authenticity and who actually believe in what they're doing and can go out and make a big argument about it.
OK, well, Baroness Aisha Hazarika, always good to chat to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, Rizzle Kicks are back, as you may well have noticed. They came back last year and they've been using their return to the music business to speak out about the highs and lows of their careers in an attempt to break down the stigma around men's mental health.
Yeah, and we're joined now by Jordan and Harley, I'm very pleased to say. Very good morning to both of you. Hi there. Thanks so much for talking to us. So, yeah, you've been opening up, haven't you, about some of the mental health struggles you went through when you started out in the music industry. Am I right in saying that you both had issues at various points? Jordan, to you first of all.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we rose to notoriety young, 19 years old, and I'm a very sensitive person, and I learnt that through experience. And for me personally, it manifested as with addiction and self-destructive tendencies, which I had to deal with eventually. And I do have ADHD, but I think particularly and it might have contributed to the destructive tendencies, but that was real. The pressure for me manifested in that way, trying to escape. Escape was my main thing.
Harley, do you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of it for me is like I reached a certain age, maybe around 24, 25, and I hadn't really taken a breath or like understood what we'd achieved or done over the past 5, 6 years, because it'd always been pressure to like keep going, keep moving, keep like going on to the next thing. Like, you know, I speak to a lot of young artists who are always looking for this like this place, this like I want to get there, but that when you're in it, that there doesn't really exist, because when you're en route to the there that you think exists, you're already on to the next thing. And it kind of got to 23, 24 and just kind of woke up like, whoa, what just happened? And it really hit me, you know, because we weren't ever given the time to really appreciate the situation we were in. And like Jordan said, it all happened so quickly that, yeah, I kind of just woke up one day and was like, that was so intense. And it really affected me.
Yeah, it's really powerful to hear that. And to both of you then, I mean, look, you're not and won't be the only artists that go through that kind of sudden burst into fame and then have to deal with some of the demons that come after that. So why have you chosen now to use your fame to make sure that you speak out about mental health and people protecting themselves within it?
For me personally, I think it's just because it's the truth of the experience. I feel quite passionately about the fact that mental health struggles, issues, emotional well-being isn't exclusive to, it doesn't shift or twist or turn dependent on wage brackets or, I mean, don't get me wrong, actually, you know, there can be a real extra level of stress and pressure that people can experience, especially in the UK right now in terms of with wealth inequality, etc. But that the feelings of grief and pain and battling with ourselves and our shadows, I think fame doesn't really alleviate that. Sometimes it can accentuate it. And so I personally feel like it's, you know, a role as I get older to just be truthful about the experience. You know, for a lot of people, this idea of stardom is fed as the dream. And there are great things to come from being good at a thing. But for me personally, I think celebrity and stardom is overrated. And but yeah, so that's just my personal opinion, and I feel like it's my duty actually to kind of just pass that information on.
Yeah, and so powerful when you're so high profile, you two, just saying, you know, people do go through this. It's good to be open and to talk and to seek help as well. And Holly, what about help? I mean, when you were struggling, did you feel that you had the support that you needed, given that you were really young?
Not massive, not, you know, look, it was, the end of the day, it was a completely different time. And there's a lot more attention and focus on mental health within the industry these days, whereas back then there was nothing really. There was no view on it. I didn't even know what anxiety or stage anxiety or depression really was. I didn't kind of believe it was a thing because, you know, it's built into you that it's this just made up thing. And what I really love, and going off the back of what you asked Jordan, like the reason why like it's good to talk now is because there is eyes on it. There is kind of like an understanding that it's genuine importance. I think there was a little bit of a thing back in the day where if you did talk about how you felt, or you were, especially as a young boy, it was kind of like, oh, just either grow up, get on with it, or like they're just whinging. And I think now it's kind of like been understood that it's a serious matter, you know. And I think back in the day, it just wasn't set up in the same way it is now.
Well, that's why it's so important.
Can I add one more thing onto that?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just think, because I did a session the other day with some boys in Brixton, and it was really interesting because they didn't know who I was or what I'd done. And when I spoke to them about what we had achieved, you know, in the sense of like the number of records we'd sold, and you know that we were able to alleviate ourselves from financial pressure, and then I told them that we'd stopped to make sure that we didn't break. They found it difficult to understand why someone would do that. And I just want to be very clear that like Harley and I deciding to stop engaging with the music industry, for me, was the best decision we ever could have made. And I don't regret it at all. Regardless of how much more money we could have made or how much more fame we could have had, I think it was the best decision we could have made at that point. I don't know if Harley agrees with that, but
yeah, I mean, we needed it. We 100,000% needed to take that break and just step back, appreciate what we had. You know, I started a family, and that was also helped me become a better person. And now we're back in it in our kind of like mid-30s. We have our head on our shoulders. We know what we do and don't like, and it's you know it's a lot more comforting position to be in.
Yeah. Well, you're a good age for it, and I'm glad you brought us on to family. 'Cause I was going to ask you about that there, but you've answered my question anyway as to how sort of important that can be for getting on top of these kind of demons. If you don't mind, Jordan, I want to ask you a little bit about, we've been doing politics all day, and I know that you, from one of your answers, we could hear it there, you are a supporter of Zach Palance and the Green Party. I wonder if you would reflect for us on what we saw overnight.
Yeah, I'm really happy for Hannah Spencer, genuinely. It's my personal opinion that I think Greens are the best option right now. I really do want to shift and change a lot of... I just want there to be bigger changes. Here we go. My guy, Zach.
I mean, talking about how things have changed, I guess it is quite a change as well to have Zach Palance as the leader of a party that is really sort of changing the political landscape.
Yeah. Look, it's odd. I can't get too into it because I'm not like as well informed as I think I maybe should be to make absolute remarks, but I just know that if it's between Zach Palance and Nigel Farage, it's like not a debate for me. I really don't like reform, and I like Zach Palance. I think he's a good person, and I like Hannah Spencer. So congratulations.
I think it's a very mature and grown-up way of answering that question. Jordan, Harley, appreciate you both, and thank you very much for being with us. And hopefully, look, we'll have you back on again pretty soon to talk about your campaign because it's really important. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, it's such an important message for young men, isn't it? You know that. To understand that lots of people go through struggles, and really interesting that, you know, it might look like you've got a really glossy, exciting life, but sometimes that brings pressures with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It's really good for them to be using their platform to raise that awareness. All right, let's take a look at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, the unsettled and mild weather will continue over the next few days, but tomorrow looks briefly colder. It's mostly mild out there now, with showers in the north and more general rain in the south. Southern Britain will stay rather cloudy this morning with further outbreaks of rain. Northern England and the south and east of Ireland look overcast too, but it should stay dry there. Elsewhere, expect some sunny spells, although the northwest will catch further showers, some wintry on the Scottish mountains. It'll be mild for most, with brisk winds in the extreme north and far south easing.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
All right, well, stay with us because coming up next, we're going to talk about the decision by Anthropic to not accept a US government contract that they fear could lead to the greater use of autonomous weapons. Our science and technologist Tom Clark's with us.
Yeah, just spotted him. He's coming up next.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching.
Tonight on The Wrap.
We will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
He did know what he was doing.
Both agree on that, can we?
No. You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable?
What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
It was a cheat,
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killings suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the airdrop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. Now, this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost.
Let's crack on. Let's get started. Now, Anthropic, the owner of one of the world's most powerful AI tools, has rejected a request from the US Department of War to use its AI model for warfare. The company's chief executive said they can't in good conscience agree to the Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth's demand for unrestricted use of the AI tool.
Yeah, the CEO said, these threats do not change our position. We cannot, in good conscience, accede to their request. But using these systems for mass domestic surveillance is incompatible with democratic values. He goes on. But today, frontier AI systems are simply not reliable enough to power fully autonomous weapons. We've offered to work directly with the Department of War on research and development to improve the reliability of these systems, but they have not accepted our offer. All right, well, that is Dario Amodeo, the CEO of Anthropic. Our science and tech editor, Tom Clark, is here with us, as promised. Morning to you, Tom. So maybe we should do a little background as to exactly what's going on there. So Anthropic are working with the Department of Defence, but they wanted them to go further, right?
Yeah, this is it. So and this is the important context here. It's not like these AI companies haven't already allowed access to the military and the government. In fact, the Maven system, which is used by the US military, in fact, we understand it was used to plan and execute the military operations to get Maduro out of Venezuela. That's already run by Anthropic's Claude AI. It's built into it, but under a contract with a company called Palantir, which is another defence contractor, they use it for that. They've already got their systems within the Department of Defence. Claude Code, which is like this very widely used bot for improving computer code, that's being used by the Department of Defence as well. What's changed is Peter Hegseth has said, we want to have full access to an unrestricted version of your models. These are the ones without safety guardrails. The ones we use have all got a sort of human safety filters put in to stop them doing crazy things. We want to use those for any lawful purposes, is what the Department of Defence is saying. In the US, however, there isn't a law against using AIs for mass surveillance. There isn't technically a law against using them to direct a weapon, to actually make a decision to kill somebody or not. So what Anthropic have said is, well, we want some red lines there. No mass surveillance. They can't be used without a human in the loop. And Pete Hegseth stood firm. And I think the reason it's a bit of a spat, but actually it's fundamental, I think, because it brings us back to this very significant and I think increasingly important debate as these models get better and better and better and more embedded. Are they safe? Right. And what we've got is the company that makes this model saying, we don't think they're safe enough yet for that kind of use. And they're standing up to Pete Hegseth. And let's look at this about MAGA politics as well. He's being, if you like, the charismatic sort of bully saying, you'll do what I damn well say. And they're saying not. And they can't call this bluff, because what they're going to force him to have to admit is we are considering doing those things which most rational people, including generals within the Pentagon, think they'd never be able to use AI to do anyway.
It's also fascinating. Who gets to make these choices about how far AI goes? Well, where are the ethical boundaries? Where are the safe boundaries?
And this is what safety campaigners in the US are saying. That's surely a question for Congress. And interestingly, the deadline that he's given them, 5 p.m. today, that's after Congress shuts for business. So he's effectively taking them out of the loop. It's being said, he's putting a gun to their head. Is it up to one individual, even if he's on the cabinet in the US, to make that decision? Probably not. And I think that raises really fundamental questions. It's a good standoff, and I think it's going to make Anthropic sort of help them restore their safety reputation after they got some pretty bad rap for their sort of military involvements as well.
Quick thought, we have to deal with this sort of thing here. Are we dealing with AI firms as well?
We certainly are. I mean, we know that our defence industry is very interested in AI. We have relationships with Palantir and people like that as well. And I think it's a very active question. It's one that I think we're just being reminded of. Where's that debate about AI safety? We'd sort of forgotten about it.
Yeah, and you've done a full report on this.
That's right.
And on the edge of our screen, we can see a QR code there.
Yeah, please
so if you scan it, you'll see more of Tom.
Bit more detail.
Bit more detailed, yeah. Really interesting story, Tom.
Thanks very much indeed.
Later.
All right, well, that's all for us from this morning. A huge moment in Gorton and Denton. And, of course, we'll have full coverage of the results starting the day here on Sky News.
Yeah, lots more analysis. Stay tuned.